Chapter 457. The majestic hostility spread out and stared at Durag ferociously. If he could really transform into a dragon, he would not be intimidated. No matter how similar the devil fruit's ability was to the essence of a dragon, there was still a world of difference. Let's see how thick your turtle shell is. The dark clouds in the sky suddenly became extremely bright. It was far more dazzling than the daytime. Looking up, the void behind Wuchun was dotted with countless vortexes. Dazzling divine weapons swept out from them. Treasure of the king. With Dustless's command, thousands of lights were shot out in an instant. In just a short moment, no less than thousands of various weapons were shot out. It's dangerous. Durag, who was agile and sensed danger, retreated without hesitation. With such an overwhelming number, no one could treat him as air. Bang, bang, bang. Dodging the sharp golden weapon that was piercing towards him from behind with extreme agility, Durag seemed to be at ease. He stepped on the air in a weird way and rushed towards the seaside of Road Town at full speed. Dustless, who was chasing after him, floated in the sky. Behind him was a large number of peerless divine weapons that were constantly falling. Is there no limit to the weapons in this ability? Dolag said with a frown. In less than a few breaths of time, thousands of divine weapons had already flown out. Dolag's right arm was covered with sharp spikes, and he crushed a golden divine weapon that was piercing towards him. The attacks that were as dense as a storm did not show any signs of stopping. Durag was burning with passion. No matter what he did, he could not do without money. Puff, puff. There must be a loophole in every defense. Even if there were thousands of defenses, it was difficult to achieve perfection. There were still many sword lights that swept past Durag's body, leaving messy, bloody marks on his skin. In the face of such a dense number, even with the dragon scale defense, he was still covered with cuts and bruises. Just leaving such negligible scars, if one had to find a perfect creature, only a proud and mysterious existence like the dragon could be qualified. Perfect attacks, impeccable defensive scales, and even a legendary ability to control the 5 elements. In short, the ability was as numerous as the hair on a cow, and they were all the kind of strange existence that was shocking. Is it because he's Luffy's father? Thinking that such a powerful fruit might fall into the hands of Drago, Dustless couldn't help but feel envious and jealous. The number and range of the divine weapons behind him increased dramatically. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Clang, clang, clang. The ear-piercing rumbles continued, one after another, one wave after another. The golden divine weapons that fell from the ground formed a magnificent golden avenue. Only a cyan scale armor appeared on Durag's body, which easily defended against the incoming weapons. That old bastard must be planning something. Gazing at the boundless ocean in front of him, Durag was obviously not fleeing aimlessly. He must have some unknown purpose. In the future, Durag was able to overthrow the world government's allies one after another, which made the world government so angry that they couldn't find a trace of him for several years. This was enough to prove how extraordinary his brain was. Although Dustless despised this mouse that only knew how to hide and stare expressionlessly at the distant horizon, his heart was as calm as still water as he stared indifferently at the distant void. Boom, boom, boom. The dark clouds in the sky were violently squirming, and the ear-piercing thunder resounded through the sky. The irregular thunder and lightning condensed, and a thick beam of light pierced through the sky and immediately roared down. The target was Dustless. The speed of the thunder and lightning was extremely fast, and, at the same time, it happened suddenly. It was inevitable that the whole person was hit by the dancing thunder and lightning in the sky. Immediately, an unprecedented feeling of paralysis spread to the nerve endings. His body twitched for a while, and even the most basic control was difficult to do. This is just the beginning. Seeing this, Durag just sneered again, and suddenly waved his big hand, and the whole sky trembled under his hand. The thunder and lightning in the sky stopped, and all the thunder and lightning converged. Dustless was still unable to move. He just floated in the air strangely, motionless, and his eyes were dull and dead. Seeing this, Durag's face was indifferent. He waved his big hand again, and the strange scene appeared again. Suddenly, a gust of piercing cold wind blew in the void, and the monstrous snow followed. Obviously, it was controlled by someone, and all of it wrapped around Dustless, who was already unable to move. In less than half a second, Dustless's whole person was swallowed and annihilated by the white snow, and turned into a huge snowball that was large enough to cover the whole earth. Still far from it. As Durag's voice fell again, the thunder and lightning sounded again, and the sky was filled with heavy rain. The combination of water and snow made the big snowball more solid. Ka ka ka. Just when it was about to show its power again, visible cracks appeared on the surface of the snowball. The surface that was supposed to be white was actually eroded by some mysterious blue power. That's a very evil feeling. Narrowing his eyes, Durag carefully stared at the blue light, and suddenly he had a creepy feeling. He could vaguely see the vague outline of a giant. It's really a wonderful performance. Manchi di Durag. The calm voice came out, containing an indescribable special energy. It lingered in the void for a long time and did not dissipate. The huge snowball slowly collapsed, revealing a burly figure. If you can really become a dragon, you can give it a try. I also want to see whether the complete Kinsusinu, or the legendary dragon, is stronger or weaker. After that, the complete Kinsusinu moved with the momentum, and the long sword was unsheathed. The awe-inspiring sword wind cut through the thorns and was divided into two by the sea. What kind of monster is this? Durag lost his calmness and said in a hoarse and gloomy voice. He stared at the blue giant that was hundreds of meters high. Even with his composure, he was sitting on pins and needles at this moment, and the shadow of death covered his whole body. Chapter 458. The complete form of Kinsusinu was equivalent to completely stepping into the realm of God. It was one of the invincible abilities that could only be activated when the strength reached an unprecedented level. Both the attack and defense were sublimated to an incredible level. Boom, boom, boom. Accompanied by a loud bang, a long and narrow crack appeared on the calm sea, stretching and extending without limit. The scale was tens of kilometers long and boundless. Looking up, even if you wanted to see through it, you couldn't see the end at a glance. Is this your true form? Durag's tone was full of surprise, and he clenched his huge fist tightly. He didn't expect the gap between the two to be so big. In front of the gorgeous golden light, Durag also felt a fear from the bottom of his heart. Both sides were completely dimensional. Especially the scarlet eyes that looked at him made his soul tremble. Even so, he couldn't just wait for death. Dense green scales emerged all over his body, and Durag's body also underwent an amazing change. This guy is really a dragon fruit, a rare species. Wu Chun touched his smooth chin and carefully looked at Dolag, who had turned into the state of mythical beast. There was a meaningful smile at the corner of his mouth. It is precisely because of this that it has value. At a glance, Durag's body had already transformed into a snake body that was several hundred meters long. Its entire body was covered in dense scales, and its dragon head and antlers were extraordinarily mighty. Its elegant body completely ignored the existence of gravity as it floated in the void. Bursts of dragon roars resounded through the void, splashing out visible ripples, and the ancient dragon roars spread throughout the sea. The battle between the two behemoths quickly attracted the attention of the Navy and the pirates in Roadtown, and they all looked at the battle between the two prehistoric creatures in horror. Hundreds of meters of insects can also overturn the sea when they move, not to mention these two behemoths. Ow, ow, ow. Durag, who was soaring in the void, revealed to the complete form of Kinsusinu, and the hot air in his mouth was blowing out, revealing his big mouth full of fangs. Is it useful? Overconfident idiot. A contemptuous smile appeared on his cold face. He raised his ancient katana again and stared at the dragon flying toward him. Then, he mercilessly slashed down, and an awe-inspiring and domineering saber wind swept out again. The light that cut through the thistles and thorns streaked across the sky. Wherever it passed, there would be slight distortions. The sharp roar made people dizzy, and the saber wind that scattered in all directions was especially domineering. Even though they were hundreds of meters away, they still felt a prickling sensation on their skin. Poochie, even though its whole body was protected by hard scales, Durag was still covered with wounds. Blood splashed everywhere. The dragon that was roaming in the sky suddenly fell down and turned into a dead snake on the ground. Its aura was so weak that it could be ignored. It was struggling at death's door, only relying on its instinct to float. "You're surprisingly weak, dragon." Dustless curled his lips in disdain. Just as he was about to remove the complete Kinsusinu, the arrogant dragon raised its head again and glared at Dustless ferociously while speaking in human language. "Then I really disappoint you." After suffering such a serious injury, Durag's vitality was unexpectedly strong. It still maintained a state of high spirits. Its dragon eyes were glaring at Dustless, and its prestige was not reduced. A strange color flashed in its eyes from time to time, as if it was calculating the odds of victory. "Let's take a gamble." After careful calculation, the reason in Durag's eyes was replaced by madness. When it was about to launch a sneak attack, Dustless's cold voice spread in the vast night. "Until now, you still think that you still have the confidence to defeat me." Shaking his head helplessly, Dustless really didn't know where this guy's confidence came from. Now that his head was broken and bleeding, he still maintained his eagerness to try. But then again, this guy is such a powerful fruit, I might as well make use of it. The value of controlling him is far better than killing him. With a gleam in his eyes, Dustless secretly decided. According to the ability shown by Durag before, the dragon fruit he used should have the ability to control the 5 elements. The strength of the ability can be imagined. Especially at such a young age, Durag obviously hasn't exerted the fruit's ability to the limit. If he wants to exert the dragon fruit to the fullest, he still has a long way to go. "Don't worry, I changed my mind. Instead of killing you directly, it's better to keep you in captivity. After squeezing out your value, I'll kill you like garbage." Dustless and Kinsusinu had a gloomy face, and the laughter from his mouth made people's scalp numb. The scarlet 5-pointed star Eternal Kaleidoscope was even more evil and demonic. It would be a pity to kill Durag directly like this, especially the dragon fruit he used. Dustless was also very envious of the ability to transform into a dragon. "If I can snatch the dark fruit one day in the future with my body's toughness, I can definitely have the same fruit's ability as Blackbeard. At that time, I can kill Durag and obtain his ability." Thinking of Blackbeard who dominated the sea in the future, Dustless's eyes were filled with fanaticism. The reason why Blackbeard could devour other fruits was firstly because of the dark fruit's ability, and secondly because of his special body structure. On the surface, it was similar to a human's, but in reality, there was a world of difference. Dustless didn't think that his body was worse than Blackbeard's, and he even had an advantage over him. The only thing he lacked was the dark fruit. "Want to control me? Dream on." Durag roared indignantly. No matter how calm he was angered by Dustless. Dustless's words clearly meant that he wanted to raise him as a slave. This was intolerable. "Dream on? I don't like to dream, and you seem to have entered the end of the predicament. You are in a dilemma." Hearing this, Wu Chun just quietly stared at Durag's body that was full of wounds. He couldn't help but sigh secretly, although there was the factor of bullying the weak now. Chapter 459. In the future, he could be called the most vicious criminal in the world, which also reflected what kind of person Durag was. If he was an ordinary person, the world government would not give him such a good name to set him off. Before you were in your best state, you could only withstand one move. Now, with this kind of behavior, the threat to me is even less. Your dying struggle has no effect except for more wounds. Durag in front of him was covered in blood, and wounds of various sizes were all over his body. His breath was weak, and he was no different from an old man in the wind. In the eyes of Dustless, he was already a lamb waiting to be slaughtered, and his life was in his hands. If you can, I will give a try. I will not bow to a villain like you even if I die. Durag didn't want to talk nonsense. He was a man of ideals and beliefs. If it were other conditions, he might be able to endure it. Durag understood the principle that a real man should know when to stretch and when to shrink. However, Dustless's conditions exceeded the limit of tolerance. The leader of the Revolutionary Army became a slave who shook his head and begged for mercy in order to survive. He couldn't do it no matter how broad-minded he was. I won't accept people like you even if you really bow your head. Shaking his head, Dustless said casually, Durag's ambition is known to the world. His ambition is not limited to an island or country. The so-called dream is to liberate all mankind. Dustless will also be uneasy with such an ambitious explosive around him. It is better to directly modify his memory. You don't seem to understand the situation. You may be enough to devour the whole world, and you will not be liked by anyone, and I am no exception. The gold and evil light converged in an instant, and the huge giant disappeared. Dustless floated alone in the boundless sky, and as left I began to undergo amazing changes. With a lavender base, a circle of mysterious black lines spread out, and 9 mysterious black magatama hung on it. What a strange eye! The information collected before did not mention that he had this eye. With a cautious look, Durag's dragon eyes were full of vigilance. In the next second, Durag's body also returned to its normal human form. It was not difficult to see that maintaining that state was very strenuous. Activating the devil fruit consumed physical strength. The previous dragon god state consumed dozens of times more physical strength than usual. Even after years of hard training, he still felt tired. He was panting, and cold sweat was dripping from his temples uncontrollably. You're really in a sorry state. You can only say that you're a snake in a dragon's coat. You have a golden exterior and a rotten interior. An emotionless voice came out of Dustless's throat. After Durag got out of this state, he was covered in blood. The long and narrow wounds almost swallowed him whole. If it weren't for the dragon fruit's powerful vitality, he might have died long ago. Wallow in your dreams forever. Just a glance, the so-called most vicious criminal in the world will forever wallow in the world of dreams. Nothing will happen if you voluntarily hand over law. Why do you have to end up like this? Falling beside Drago, Dustless stared at Drago, who had completely turned into a walking corpse, and whispered, as the saying goes, a good death is better than a bad life. Maybe if it were someone else, they would choose to compromise. The powerful I-power of Rinsei Sharingan is not something that Durag can bear. To be conservative, Dustless chose to use the right eye with a slightly weaker I-power, Tensigan, to search for traces of law. Pretending to be a savior, it turns out that the bad things he did are no less than me. Dustless looked at Drago with disdain, and there was a trace of contempt in his eyes. He thought that this old guy was really a god who saved the world, but after reading the memory in his mind, he found that his idea was too simple. Now the Revolutionary Army is only at the beginning of its establishment. Its prestige is not enough, and it has not made any substantial action. It is active in the dark world, and life is difficult. Some people inevitably feel hesitant about the future, and they will shrink back and choose to be deserters. Most of these people are secretly executed. Hypocritical to the extreme. After a while, after reading all the memories of Drago, Dustless had mixed feelings. It is undeniable that Drago really has the revenge to unify the world, but his means are not very flattering. The reason why the Revolutionary Army is so low-key is that many people are looking for power rocks and ancient weapons. Both are weapons of mass destruction, and Drago obviously can't play with them. The ambition is not small. Pluton, Tian Wang, and Sea King all want to take it for themselves. With a sneer, Dustless's handsome face was full of sarcasm. The Revolutionary Army is a group of uncouth people. It is impossible to get the ancient weapons. They who don't know the poneglyph will never find the location of the ancient weapons. In the whole world, only the survivor of O'Hara can understand the real poneglyph and can interpret the place where the ancient weapons are sleeping. A mysterious energy fluctuation gushed out from his palm and invaded Durag's mind. Dustless was rewriting Durag's memory. The memory of the past didn't change, but there was one more special command: to be loyal to him forever. After a while, Drago's look returned to normal. He still maintained the silence of the past. His wise and deep eyes were calm, and his eyes were full of respect when he looked at Dustless. One sentence also destroyed the image of this ferocious criminal that the world feared. "Master." Hearing this, Dustless nodded expressionlessly. The word master sounded very awkward and made him very uncomfortable. He originally wanted to correct Dragon Dark Fruit and change the way he addressed Dragon Dark Fruit, but after thinking about it, he gave up. After obtaining the Dark Fruit, Dustless would personally kill him and seize the ability of the Dragon Fruit. Oh. Chapter 460. Time flew by, and 3 days passed quietly between his fingers. Dustless Mariewal looked at the morning paper of the next day with interest, and the most conspicuous banner clearly left such words. A large number of pirates in Row Town were all annihilated by the Marine without any escape. Shiki was killed on the spot, and Kaido was seriously injured, and his whereabouts are unknown. To some extent, he escaped. It is undeniable that Kaido does have that ability. After a moment of silence, Dustless's fingers tapped rhythmically on the transparent table. Whether it was the 100 Beast Kaido or the Golden Lion Shiki, they were just passers-by in his long destiny, insignificant. He once again put on a desperate escape for the world. He deserves to be one of the Yonko for emperors in the future. Recalling Kaido's past, his heart was as calm as water. He was a person who performed miracles. Even if he slipped away from the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, Dustless would not be surprised. He was captured 18 times when he challenged the other Yonko for emperors and the Marine. He was also tortured more than 1,000 times. Kaido had been sentenced to death 40 times. When he was hanged, his chains would break. When he was pressed onto the guillotine, his machete would shatter. When he was stabbed by a spear, his spear would break. He had sunk as many as 9 huge prison ships. This incredible record is enough to make the strong people all over the world afraid. It's really boring. Those guys have been dustless to this point in order to save their face. Dustless said with a sigh of relief. Dustless saw the scene in Road Town that day, and it was indeed as recorded in the newspaper, but the newspaper did not mention anything about the heavy losses on their side. Obviously, the Marine deliberately concealed the truth of the matter. This kind of thing is not surprising. It is the government's strength to invert right and wrong. Regardless of Dustless's Tenryubito face, Hawkeye said straightforwardly. Hearing that, Wu-chan casually shrugged his shoulders and smiled. He started to recall the initiator of all this, Dolag. Everything was thanks to that old man. After tampering with his memory, Dustless did not make things difficult for him. He was still the former leader of the Revolutionary Army, but he added a lot of spice to his memory. Search for the whereabouts of Nico Robin. Only by grabbing this key would he be able to open Pandora's ink box. Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral Sky will be promoted to the position of Fleet Admiral, and the new Admiral Sengoku will take over Sky's position and become the next Marine Fleet Admiral. Only in Hawkeye and Dustless's room, White Zetsu suddenly popped out of the ground and revealed even more shocking news. Hearing this, even with Hawkeye's calm temperament, he didn't recover for a while. His pupils dilated. The replacement of the Marine Fleet Admiral is not a trivial matter. The scope of indirect influence affects the whole world situation. Warring states, only he is qualified. Dustless said with a look of understanding in his eyes. Dustless, who knew this, was unusually calm, but gently nodded. Although he didn't know when warring states would be promoted to the position of Fleet Admiral, he was sure that the person who would replace Sky would be warring states. Because so far, Warring States is the only admiral in the Marine headquarters and the only one who is eligible to be promoted to Fleet Admiral. Garp refused to be promoted to Admiral. Can the news be confirmed? White Zetsu. Looking up, Dustless asked calmly. No matter how Hawkeye reacted, he still cared about the accuracy of the news. After Warring States became the Marine Fleet Admiral, one of the major decisions laid the foundation of the whole world. This is natural. Warring States and Sky just came out of the office of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. I am afraid it will not be long before they become Fleet Admiral Warring States and Sky Admiral. White Zetsu said confidently. Since the last time he was caught by the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and even half of his body was burned, he retreated and began to spy carefully. Despite this, he still occasionally heard the conversation between Warring States and Sky. But the strange thing is that Warring States is obviously promoted to Fleet Admiral, but his face is unexpectedly ugly and scary. White Zetsu was puzzled when he remembered the gloomy face of Warring States that day. Promotion is a good thing, but Admiral Sensei looked like he had lost his parents, which really made White Zetsu confused. This is something new. Hearing this, Hawkeye also interjected with curiosity. Promotion to Marine Fleet Admiral with a sad face, but the secret behind it is worth exploring. How is Fleet Admiral Sky's performance? If I didn't guess wrong, he should have the same ugly expression as Warring States. Looking at White Zetsu with a smile, Dustless asked mysteriously. He had already faintly guessed the content of the conversation between the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, and Sensei, and Fleet Admiral Sky. Yes, Warring States and Sky's faces are extremely ugly. White Zetsu nodded when he heard the words, and the facts coincided with Dustless's guess. With a strange smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless picked up the straight teacup on the table and took a sip with a pleasant look. His deep eyes were wise and full of rationality. As a Marine, it is a righteous force that defends the world with absolute justice. Naturally, it will not be easily defeated. Sky and Warring States are among the best among them. Now the strange face is really strange. If I didn't guess wrong, the deformed product of 7 Warlords of the Sea is about to be born. Dustless secretly murmured, although his guess is very certain. As a Marine of absolute justice, he naturally hates evil pirates, and 7 Warlords of the Sea is a special organization, an extreme pirate in the name of justice. Warring States and Sky have spent most of their lives dealing with pirates, and they are faced with the dilemma of suddenly joining forces with pirates. It must be difficult for them to accept it, both in public and private. There is a feeling of betrayal. Their former comrades have fallen under the blade of the pirates, and the Marines, shouldering the flag of justice, are colluding with the pirates. This is no different from slapping their own face. What can you do if you struggle? In the end, your Marine is just the face of the government. It is dispensable. Walking out of the window, Dustless sighed with mixed feelings as he stared at the slowly dissipating Marine battleship in the distance. Strength is power. Even if the Marine headquarters is unwilling, they can only bow their head. Chapter 461. The only thing that interests Dustless is that both Boa Hancock and Hawkeye have been tamed by him, and the future Shichibukai is equal to the lack of 2 suitable candidates. The position of Shichibukai is not something that can be done easily. At the very least, it is suitable to be a famous big pirate, and their strength must be recognized by the world. Let's go with the flow. These trivial things, leave it to the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, to worry about. It has nothing to do with me. With a silent sigh, the confusion disappeared, and Dustless was too lazy to entangle. The world government and Tenryubido are inextricably linked, but they are not very involved. Tenryubido is the behind-the-scenes boss of the government, and they can take care of the world without worrying about their employees. What's more, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will not ask for help from Tenryubido. Of course, they're more direct and disdainful. More than 99% of Tenryubido are synonymous with incompetence and uselessness in their eyes. There is one more thing. As if thinking of something, White Zetsu suddenly opened his mouth, and a strange color flashed in his eyes. It was originally a trivial matter, but after thinking about the cause and effect, he felt that it was necessary to tell Dustless. The recent sailing route of the Don Quixote pirates is a bit strange. After a moment of silence, White Zetsu spoke. A day ago, the Don Quixote pirates were still circling in the New World, and now the sailing route is completely opposite, and the destination is even more strange. Don Quixote pirates? Hearing this, Dustless frowned slightly, and a trace of dissatisfaction flashed in his eyes. Don Quixote Doflamingo is now just a small character, and Dustless can't see it, and it's an insignificant route problem. Seeing Dustless showing signs of anger, White Zetsu quickly said, "The sailing track of the Don Quixote pirates is completely opposite from the original, and the destination seems to be sailing in the direction of Mariehua." With a sigh of relief, White Zetsu knew the truth, and such a strange sailing route was indeed too abnormal. Mariehua? Could it be that Doflamingo is going to turn over a new leaf and be reborn after surrendering himself? Hawkeye was obviously quite surprised, and then joked in boredom. Doflamingo is a very evil pirate. He has done countless bad things. At a young age, the bounty on his head is much higher than that of some old pirates. Turn yourself in and repent, unless the sun rises in the west. Rolling his eyes, Dustless shook his head and continued to analyze. Doflamingo is a different kind of pirate. His purpose is not as simple as other big pirates. He is meticulous and will use anyone he can to achieve his purpose. At such a young age, Doflamingo had sent Virgo to infiltrate the Navy, starting from the most basic soldier. It could be seen that Doflamingo was a patient person. You dare to come to Mariehua on your own initiative. The calm eyes of the ancient well splashed with faint ripples, and the corners of his mouth outlined an arc of interest. After a moment's deliberation, Yang Ling's eyes regained their calm. He could vaguely guess the reason for Doflamingo's visit. It seems that he's going to lay his cards on the table. His courage and courage are not small. In the past, the reason why the Marines chased after Doflamingo, according to Dustless's speculation, was that they did not know his identity as a Tenryubito, and the second reason was that some Tenryubito were behind it. Doflamingo knows the so-called Mariehua national treasure. Although he doesn't know the specific content, it must be related to the life and death of Tenryubito, so it is not impossible for the Marines to chase Doflamingo behind his back. However, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, are all old and cunning people. Even if he is a Tenryubito, if he is so bold, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, may kill him. The status of Tenryubito is higher than the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, but in the end, the world is still respected by the strong, and only a Tenryubito like Dustless can face the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, calmly. As for those Tenryubito who are lazy all day long, they may not have the confidence of Dustless. Young master, what we're doing is no different from looking for death. We're just walking into a trap. On the calm sea, a large ship sailed at high speed. The bow was a fiery red bird, and a strong man with pink feathers stood on it, looking at the sea in front of him blankly. His heart was as calm as stagnant water. Behind him were the family cadres of the Don Quixote pirates, as well as the crew. Captain Marines Vice Admiral Saru could easily chase us all over the world. If we go to the world government's nest like this, 100 lives will not be enough. The sloppy man Treble persuaded the tall man at the bow of the ship, and his heart was extremely bitter. When mentioning the word captain, Treble deliberately emphasized the word, hoping that Doflamingo could take responsibility and not do stupid things. Law and the surgeon fruit could be restarted if they disappeared. Entering the tiger's mouth meant that they had completely stepped into hell. There is no doubt that the expressionless man with bronze skin in the bow of the ship is Doflamingo. Don't worry, Mariehua. I will go when I want to go. No one can stop me. Those 5 guys have to step aside. Hearing this, Doflamingo's mouth swept with an arrogant smile, and his cold heart was filled with warmth. After personally executing the traitor Corazon, He has regarded these crew members as family. Jumping off the bow and looking at the crew, Doflamingo nodded with satisfaction. But then again, you don't have to go with me. Those guys won't care about you. Doflamingo said in a deep voice. He can't shelter the crew who accompany him day and night. They won't dare to touch me. I'm different from those rubbish Tenryubito. Looking at the dark surface in the distance, Doflamingo smiled confidently. The unprecedented confidence in his tone made the crew tactfully shut their mouths. Within the Don Quixote pirates, he is the dictator, and no one can question Doflamingo's will as well as his words and deeds. Thank you. If you like this book, tell me about the heroine you like. If conditions permit, I will add it. Chapter 462. Doflamingo's unbridled laughter resounded through the endless sky. He was extremely arrogant and proud. He looked straight ahead, embracing the entire sky. It was as if the entire surface of the sea and the entire world were right in front of his eyes. He could see everything with a single glance. The whole world. He didn't want to look at it as an equal, but he looked at it as a ruler and looked down on the ugliness of human nature. Doflamingo once swore that he would retaliate in his own way against this dirty world ruled by celestial dragons. The members of the Don Quixote family looked at each other and bowed their heads silently. Doflamingo was cruel to the enemy, but he treated his own people as his family. There was nothing to say. Brother, Treble was about to passionately choose to die with Doflamingo. Although the latter was quite moved, he waved his hand lightly. The so-called world government's nest, Mariewa, was no different from an afternoon stroll in the back garden in his eyes. I'm going to rob them, not to die. You will only be a burden if you follow me. Doflamingo's eyes were like torches, and he made the final decision. The world government was not a tourist destination, but a tiger's den. The government was worried about his identity as a celestial dragon, but they had no scruples about this group of crew members. It was impossible to directly catch or execute them. Young master, you are so obsessed with the world government. Is it Treble, who was sloppy and smelly, twisted his fat body and walked to Doflamingo's side, and said in a voice that could only be heard by two people, "Is it possible that you want to seek their protection?" Treble's words were shocking, and Doflamingo just looked at him deeply, then nodded heavily, completely ignoring the disgusting smell on his body as if it didn't exist. We are big pirates in the New World. The government has no reason to accept us. In my opinion, as long as we come to the door, we will be locked in the deep-sea prison. The world government was sometimes more despicable than pirates. This was known to the world. In Treble's eyes, the government was an outlaw dressed in the cloak of justice. Every time they committed murder, they would dress up with the word justice in gorgeous clothes. He also knew why Doflamingo sought help from the government. Back then, he didn't agree with Doflamingo's proposal, but he couldn't do anything about it. In the end, Doflamingo did it without hesitation. No problem. I found a big boss who can accept us, and he must be tempted by the chips I took out. Doflamingo looked at the blue sky in the distance and said with certainty. The oncoming sea breeze blew Doflamingo's blonde hair into a mess, and the feathers on his back danced in the wind. His whole person turned into a different scenery, and it was eye-catching. The only pity was that his spirited gaze was no longer as bright and spirited as before. Instead, it was filled with a different kind of sadness, enveloping an atmosphere of sadness. It was hard to imagine that the ambitious Doflamingo would be so sad. Treble's mouth squirmed, but he also closed his mouth. He knew that Doflamingo's identity was not simple, and he was not the kind of person who would take risks. They only needed to silently support him. In the future, I still hope to rule the world, but that little rascal law. It's a pity that he can't be used. Suddenly, an ancient drawing appeared in his hand. It was drawn with a messy and neat pattern, full of traces of the vicissitudes of time. The paper was waxen yellow, and it was probably hundreds of years old. The unknown paper even had many holes, and it was no different from waste paper. Even if it was dilapidated to such an extent, Doflamingo was still cautious. As if he had received a treasure, he remained cautious and did not dare to be careless. He held it tightly in his hand, and it seemed that it was more precious than his life. "You don't agree to my conditions? Do you dare?" Kiki. After a while, a gloomy laughter that made one's scalp numb came from Doflamingo's throat. Following his line of sight, one could vaguely see the pattern on the old paper, which recorded all kinds of accurate data. It was an unprecedented behemoth. After its pure area was enlarged, it was even larger than an island. "Oi, oi, Treble, the young master doesn't seem to be right recently. I feel like he's missing a string." A sturdy man in armor quietly walked in front of Treble and whispered softly. This person was called Pika, and he was also the mainstay of the Don Quixote pirates. This is just an extreme performance of the young master, venting his excessive excitement. Don't care about the details. Treble's mouth twitched, and his fat face changed slightly. Since the last battle of Log Town, Shiki died, and Kaido's whereabouts were unknown. Doflamingo's mood changed greatly. He lost the wisdom of a captain, and his face was gloomy all day long. Since when did the two of you like to gossip so much?" Treble and Pika whispered conversation, and Doflamingo, who had good attainments in observation hockey, naturally heard it, and he just snorted coldly. The two also closed their mouths. If those drawings fall into the hands of the pirates of the New World, I'm afraid that the world government will jump up and down to find the celestial dragons to save their lives." Doflamingo smiled, and his whole person showed an unprecedented crazy posture. "Although it's just a simple and casual drawing, if it falls into the hands of some pirates who hate the government and the marine, it will cause a huge shock. When it comes out, it's likely to be the end of an era. Although the conditions for opening it are extremely harsh, these are nothing. For example, a big pirate like Kaido, who hates the government, has a monstrous force, and has countless islands under his command, is fully capable of reviving the terrible thing on the blueprint." Chapter 463. It was because of this mysterious and very deterrent existence that Doflamingo could leisurely walk in the world government, even if he came to the world government as a pirate. No one dared to move. If this kind of nuclear weapon was exposed, it meant that the whole world would be contaminated by nuclear pollution. He became crazy. "You want to fight with me? Sooner or later, this world will be mine." The bronze-colored muscles all over his body bulged, and a powerful roar spread out. The invisible impact contained some kind of indescribable special energy fluctuation, and it was rapidly oppressive and soul-sucking. The sky rippled, and the clouds that touched it were instantly annihilated. The progress is so fast. Can Haoshiku be used to this extent? Treble was surprised, and then he breathed a sigh of relief. At first, he just appreciated the young Doflamingo, and he had the temperament of a king at such a young age. He gave him the multi-thread fruit, which was also in line with the nature of pirate. It was completely a gamble. But now, it seemed that he had not sacrificed his life for the sake of the heavens and earth. Instead, he was reaping huge profits today. 2 days later, World Government Mariewa. On the balcony, Dustless looked lazy, lying comfortably on the couch, and the warm sunshine immediately shone. His cheeks were full of sunshine, and his smile was as warm as jade. It was the opposite of the dark him in the past. The ability to make the sky jealous. Leisurely looking at the devil fruit with different abilities, Dustless choked in his throat. Even if he now has all kinds of means and countless cards, he was still fascinated by the various abilities of the devil fruit. He thought that the variety of ninjutsu was really an advantage, but now it seems that the same is true for the devil fruit. Some of the devil fruit's abilities are even more shocking than Dustless's imagination. "Hancock, how is the collection of devil fruit?" Feeling the warmth from the most important part of man, Dustless felt a burst of excitement. He looked up and saw Hancock, who was working hard with her thin lips. As the saying goes, after a few times, although Hancock was still a little shy, she was not as resistant as before. Perhaps the nature of a slave has been deeply ingrained in her bones, and her thoughts are also deeply ingrained. Oh, Hancock, who was dressed in a black maid costume, wiped her wet lips with a lace scarf and stood respectfully on the right side of Wu Chun. Her voice was pleasant to the ears. There are a lot of gains, but most of them are ordinary goods. There are no refreshing abilities. Hancock's expression instantly changed, and she said rather seriously, Dustless did everything that Dustless asked her to do. Continue collecting. Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with disappointment. There was no specific information about some of the devil fruits in the illustrated handbook, so it was extremely difficult to find them. Dustless waved his hand and signaled Hancock to retreat. Then he closed his eyes. Ta-ta. The rhythmic sound of leather shoes sounded, and Hancock was nowhere to be seen. In the spacious room, there was only Wu Chun basking in the sun alone on the balcony. After a while, Dustless opened his eyes again, revealing a puzzled expression. Where did these weird devil fruits originate? A long time ago, Dustless wondered about the origin of devil fruits. These fruits with magical abilities could not fall out of thin air. After the fall of each generation of devil fruit's host, the devil fruit owned by the host will reappear in other places in the world, so it goes on endlessly, as if the curse will continue forever. Dustless Sama, White Zetsu, who was composed of monotonous white, appeared like a ghost, and the world was like his nest, casual and simple. Is it possible that Doflamingo has arrived at Mariewa? Raising his eyelids, he looked at the void in front of him, and his dead eyes finally showed some vitality. That's not it. Law's been found. After the return of Rotown, Dustless told White Zetsu word for word about the trace of Law that he got from Dorag's mind. After several days, Law finally got it. Do you want to bring him back immediately? White Zetsu asked coldly. Although his strength was extremely ordinary, it was easy to deal with a little demon like Law. White Zetsu thought that it would be a trivial matter to fight 10 Laws. Hearing this, Dustless thought about it seriously and chose to shake his head. Life should be full of surprises. Planning his life. Maybe it will run counter to the results we expect. Just keep an eye on his traces. It is all kinds of sudden accidents that combine to create this special Tragafar Law, and forcing him to change his outlook on life will only be counterproductive. Wu Qin smiled and said, even if Sun Wukong exhausted all his strength, he still wouldn't be able to jump out at Tathagata's Five-Finger Mountain. Don't even think about it. Now Law is just a child. Not to mention the extreme surgery of immortal surgery. He doesn't even have the ability to control surgeon fruit. The strong hatred born of the killing of Corazon is the driving force that drives Law to continue to become stronger. With this strong hatred, he will have the motivation to improve. In this regard, Law is quite similar to someone Dustless once knew. Sasuke. The experience is surprisingly similar. Although there are some differences in personality, some aspects are also in line, so you're destined to have the same ending. Sasuke, his younger brother, was killed by Dustless himself and was finally burned into nothingness by Amaterasu. In the future, Law is also destined to fall and sacrifice for Dustless's plan. Some people are destined to be the foil of others. Bang, bang, bang. In the clean and cheerful void, there was an explosion of air bursting without warning. Looking far away, thin lines that could not be captured by the naked, I covered the void. An arrogant figure came into view, stepping straight on these thin lines and rushing over. It seemed to be a direct air attack on Mariewa. Chapter 464. The ability of string fruit is quite broad and involves a lot of fields. Its abilities are also very tricky and powerful. It is a perfect devil fruit, and it is also very practical. Paramecia fruit users who can fly with the help of their ability are few and far between. Is he trying to invade directly? White Zetsu said with some surprise as he looked at the black spot roaring from the distant sky. Even if Doflamingo is a Tenryabito, it is impossible for him to be safe and sound by provoking Mariewa directly. The tolerance of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is not as broad as the world thinks. Some people, such as those with higher strength, will be narrow-minded. It coincides with the rumors. Heavenly Yiksha, Doflamingo, is really an unruly and arrogant pirate. He doesn't put anyone in his eyes and dares to be presumptuous in the territory of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Thinking of the lower half of his body that was destroyed a few days ago when he was spying on information, White Zetsu was sweating with lingering fear. Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is by no means a kind person. They're all hungry wolves. They eat people without spitting out the bones. They usually have a hypocritical smile, and if they show any flaws, they will definitely be swallowed. Arrogant. Hearing this, Dustless's dark eyes flashed disapprovingly. Arrogance also needs capital. Doflamingo is barely one of the characters that Dustless looks up to. Although arrogant, it is undeniable that he does have a strong hand to fight with Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Arrogance is also a manifestation of strength. You can understand that arrogance is a way for Doflamingo to demonstrate. With his hands crossed, Dustless smiled with interest. According to Dustless's guess, he does have an unknown trump card in his hand, which is estimated to be the so-called Great National Treasure of Mariewa. Although he doesn't know what it is not difficult to see how shocking it is since it can threaten the world government and Tenryubido. Dustless still vaguely remembers that when Doflamingo took his father's head back to Mariewa, the Tenryubido not only did not return the power to Don Quixote's family, but also turned against Doflamingo. In the end, it seemed that it was because of the big secret treasure that he left safely, and since then, Doflamingo's personality had been seriously distorted, and he began to hate the world of the celestial dragons very much. An ancient weapon doesn't seem likely. Dustless speculated as his brows furrowed. If it was really an ancient weapon, Doflamingo might have controlled it to wander around the world, and according to his hatred for the celestial dragons, he had already destroyed Mariewa. Maybe it's a blueprint. For example, the secret of Heavenly King. White Zoo's eyes lit up. He took a deep breath and said excitedly, "Ancient weapons were all special existences with the title of God, so it was easy to imagine how powerful they were." Shaking his head, Dustless concluded with unusual certainty, "It shouldn't be possible. What kind of virtue does that kid have? The Heavenly King is not something he can touch." Dustless did not believe that Doflamingo had the ability to decipher the ancient weapons in the poneglyph. And there is no news to prove that the legendary Heavenly King, Uranus, is a battleship-like existence. Take the future Shirahoshi as an example. It is a living life form. If the Heavenly King is really a lifeless battleship, Dustless doesn't think it has anything to do with the surgeon fruit. At the same time, Doflamingo also touched the edge of Mariewa and fell to the red line. A tall, pitch-black figure had been waiting for a long time. His face was gloomy and cold as he stared at Doflamingo with a murderous look. He didn't even try to hide his cold, murderous intent. It's not difficult to see that if he can, he definitely wants to kill Doflamingo on the spot. This person was wearing a white Taoist robe with glasses. His skin color was old and bald. The simple and unadorned long saber in his hand never left his body. Surprisingly, he was the bald Gorosei that Wu Chun was most familiar with. "Hey, why are you so angry? I just came back to drink and catch up with others." Seeing the appearance of the Gorosei, Doflamingo was as usual. Seeing the Gorosei appear halfway, Doflamingo didn't care and laughed wildly. His voice was wild and unruly. In the face of the Gorosei, who is revered by the world, he just kept calm and was extremely natural. Catch up? It was a fantasy. Don't forget, you're already a stray dog, and the Don Quixote family is no longer a celestial dragon. Mariewa has no friends with you, and the holy land of light and justice will only be tarnished and desecrated by you. The Gorosei's eyes rolled and shot out a cold light. The bald Gorosei with the sword was indifferent and murderous. He did not put Doflamingo's identity as a celestial dragon in his eyes. In this world, only the words of the strongest are the hard truth. It is true that the celestial dragon status is higher than the Gorosei, but it is not something that anyone can provoke. "Hey, old man, Is your brain not enough for so many years? If I make the information of the drawings public, the whole world will fall into a vortex, and you should know what the consequences will be." The grinding of teeth made a chilling sound, and Doflamingo said meaningfully, "The big pirate who escaped some time ago. 100 Beast Kaido, his ambition can swallow the world. If the things in my hands fall into his hands, the collapse of this peaceful world is just around the corner." Not only was Doflamingo not afraid of the 5 Elder Stars, but he was also threatening him. "Are you threatening this old man?" Narrowing his eyes, the Gorosei with the sword asked faintly, very casually. In an instant, the surrounding space suddenly solidified, stopped flowing, filled with suffocating oppression, and a buzzing sound of steel resonated and spread out. Looking up, it turned out to be the Gorosei with the ancient sword in his hand, shaking excitedly. "Let's stop here. I can't play too much. If this guy is angered, he may really kill me." Frowning, Doflamingo secretly thought and decided to stop while he was ahead. Everyone's tolerance has a limit, and the final result of angering him is to burn himself. Chapter 465. Doflamingo came to Mariehua aggressively, and naturally, it is impossible for it to be for the Shichibukai. Sengoku, Admiral and Fleet Admiral Sky also received the orders of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, not long ago. Even Dustless is just his own inference. The specific news is only known by Sengoku and Sky, including Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Even if Doflamingo has unparalleled magical powers, he has no way to know. It also indirectly shows that the sudden arrival of Mariehua has nothing to do with Shichibukai. TSK. Old man, why must you be so cautious? To you all, I should be a nobody. Staring at the murderous Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, Doflamingo was unwilling to lower his posture, and the identity of the celestial dragons actually had no effect on him. In a world where the strong are respected, only the people with big fists have the final say. The status of the celestial dragons is higher than the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, but no one dared to stand on the head of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. The reason why the stubborn old man in front of him is that he is afraid that Doflamingo will reveal those design drawings. You know your place. Frankly speaking, in our eyes, you are indeed a tiny grain of sand that is not worth mentioning. Since you can recognize your identity and situation, I advise you not to do stupid things in the end. Otherwise, you won't be able to escape from Mariehua's inescapable net, even if you have wings. The bald Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, with a sword said coldly and did not put Doflamingo, a celestial dragon, in his eyes at all, because a few years ago, their Don Quixote family had abandoned the identity of God and became a commoner. To put it bluntly, they are celestial dragons who have no rights at all. Ignorant fool, do you think you can do whatever you want with the design drawings of ancient weapons? Looking at Doflamingo with a sneer, the bald Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, with a sword said contemptuously in his heart, "It is undeniable that maybe the pirates of the New World gather all their strength, and there is a possibility of 1 or 2 layers to rebuild the strength of the revived ancient soldiers. But that is impossible. The fleets under the pirates of the New World have the eyes of the government and marine. Once there is an abnormal movement, they will be annihilated before they become a big thing." The reason why they had tolerated Doflamingo so many times was because the government also wanted the blueprints in his hands. Moreover, if the blueprints were exposed to the public, there would definitely be a series of problems. Anyway, Doflamingo was quite sensible. He only did some pirate business with Devil Fruit, and he didn't dare to do anything out of the ordinary. Don't even think about escaping. I remember that a while ago, groups of slaves escaped from Mariehua. Hearing this, Doflamingo retorted without showing any weakness. Doflamingo's bronze face was full of laughter. He was certain that the 5 honored stars would not fall out with him over such a trivial matter. Good for you. If you think that Mariehua can still retreat safely after doing something intolerable, you can try. With a snort, the body of the bald Gorosei instantly turned into an afterimage, and the whole person disappeared. The words were harsh, but many flamenco entered Mariewa. It could also be considered a disguised compromise. If I knew that you would do this, I would be afraid, and I finally chose to give in. After a while, Doflamingo breathed a sigh of relief and then stepped into the red line with his head held high. As a pirate, he stepped into the world's most righteous holy land. The destination is also quite strange. It stands to reason that the place where the strongest people in Mariewa are concentrated should be the location of the government office. But Doflamingo went to the place where the Tenryubito gathered. It's just a design that's limited to theory. If I can exchange it for a life-saving umbrella, this deal is worth it. Doflamingo clenched his teeth and said resolutely, dispelling the hesitation in his heart. Ancient weapons are extremely precious, but compared to life, everything is small and fragile. As for giving it to the world government in exchange for protection, Doflamingo just thought about it and threw it out of the window. Pirates are not moral and cruel. To some extent, the world government often behaves more shamelessly. Getting rid of the donkey after it has outlived its usefulness is not unique. Trading with the Gorosei, 5 honored stars, is tantamount to a direct punishment. Ah, this is interesting. In the lush grass full of weeds, White Zetsu poked his head out and looked at the leaving Doflamingo with interest and surprise. Doflamingo seemed to be aware of the malicious spying, and Doflamingo's observation haki quietly spread, and there was no one in the world that came into his eyes. A mere marine, chasing me, a Tenryubito, around the world. Turning around, he continued to walk towards the luxurious buildings in front of him. Doflamingo's face was gloomy. All of this was the fault of his dead father. Even if he killed his father and brother with his own hands, he did not have the slightest sense of guilt. If he did not give up the power of the Tenryubito, he would not have such a miserable childhood. In the final analysis, all of this is because his strength is not strong enough, and his background is not strong enough. There is no shortcut to increasing strength, and it takes endless years to accumulate. In desperation, Doflamingo can only find another way and choose a stronger background. A strong background that is enough to cause fear in the Marine and the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, can barely survive. Even a few months ago, Doflamingo did not think that there was such a transcendent existence. It was not until the fierce collision in Lowtown that he realized that the essence of the world he had seen before was just the tip of the iceberg. After some thought, he also had the idea of holding a big thigh. The design drawings of ancient weapons are useless in his hands. The officials of the world government secretly observe his every move. He is afraid that as soon as the idea of building appears, the government will mercilessly obliterate him. Handing over the design drawings of ancient weapons can also divert the attention of the world government, and at the same time, he can get excellent protection. Doflamingo does not think that there is any loss in this business. Anyway, those data are just unconfirmed theories, and only God knows whether it can be made. Chapter 466. In the ancient room, time is isolated, and you can't even see your fingers. It's dark. On the sofa, you can vaguely see a young silhouette, breathing evenly and smoothly, blending into the surrounding darkness. Even if it's close, it has a sense of being far away. In a slightly cold corridor, there was a sound of leather shoes twisting from far near, and the faint sound gradually became louder. Dustless, who was resting, opened his eyes, and his deep and shining pupils were as bright as beads. An hour ago, Doflamingo had suddenly paid a visit to the Lois family. As the only direct descendant of the Lois family and the last remaining clansman, only Dustless had come out to welcome him. However, he was lazy by nature, so he directly asked Hancock to call Doflamingo over. Before, Dustless was wondering why Doflamingo was looking for him. With the information secretly obtained by White Zetsu a few minutes ago, the confusion was relieved. Young but cunning like a fox, Dustless's face showed that he just woke up from a dream, and he sighed. At the same time, he scolded in his heart. He completely pulled up a stone and dropped it on his own feet. He must pay the price for scheming against others. Now he came to Mariewa to ask for help, but he can't blame others. Dustless, who wanted to directly let Doflamingo go, thought about it and chose to meet him. The premise of cooperation is a win-win situation, and he definitely understands this kind of little thing that the world knows. After a few more breaths, the sound of leather shoes walking was getting closer and closer, coming slowly along the dark corridor on the right. A gust of wind came from the dark hall in front of him, and Doflamingo, who was following Hancock, frowned. The cold wind passed through his body, and he couldn't help but shiver. He originally intended to use Lois South, but an absurd idea suddenly appeared in his mind. He is not enjoying the shade under a big tree, but doing something stupid like a sheep entering the tiger's mouth. For a time, he also had the idea of retreating, but his whole body was full of some kind of indescribable magic, leading Doflamingo's whole body forward, until he stepped into the dark hall. Hancock was obviously very familiar with the dark space and turned on the gorgeous light. The serene Dustless immediately entered Doflamingo's line of sight. He was completely different from the other celestial dragons. His clean and valiant appearance alone was enough to impress people. More than 99% of the rest of Mariewa celestial dragons were fat and pig-like freaks. Looking around, Dustless was just casually sitting there. Yet Doflamingo felt a sense of oppression. That unfathomable strength made him instinctively take a step back. What profound strength! Doflamingo's pupils suddenly shrank as he said in a deep voice. A true expert's aura did not need to deliberately leak out their own aura. Dustless was one such example. He was able to blend into nature and immerse himself in the surrounding space. It was not nature that controlled Dustless. On the contrary, it was Dustless that controlled nature. No matter who it is, just sit down. Seeing that Doflamingo was a little restrained, Dustless showed a magnanimous smile. In his eyes, pirates and marines were only one word apart. The gentle smile was like a spring breeze, making people involuntarily quiet, and the tense gods relaxed, and a bumpy heart was unprecedentedly calm. When Doflamingo saw this, not only did he not feel relaxed in the slightest, his chest instead felt as heavy as Mount Tai. The formless and boundless pressure that came into contact with him caused him to have exceptional difficulty in breathing. It could be determined that Dustless was absolutely not a good person. It was even worse than the 5 honored stars that devoured people without spitting out the bones. Looking up and looking at the unique symbol of celestial dragons on Dustless's chest, Doflamingo clenched his fists unwillingly. If it weren't for his dead father's naivety, he would now enjoy the privileges of celestial dragons like Dustless. Although I'm still a celestial dragon now, the gap is like clouds and earth. Doflamingo is now only a celestial dragon. Because his father insisted on giving up his identity as a god, it is equivalent to losing all privileges. Looking at Dustless intently, Doflamingo nodded and sat on the sofa opposite Dustless. After a simple preparation of words, Doflamingo was about to speak, but Dustless's light voice suddenly sounded, and the words he prepared for a long time collapsed in an instant. 100 Beast Kaido's recent movements are very strange, and it seems that he is deliberately approaching the Don Quixote pirates. A few words were a heavy blow to Doflamingo, and it was precisely because of this that he had to put down his old face and return to the source of evil that he deeply hated. The reason why Whitebeard fought with Kaido, in addition to the long-accumulated grievances between the two, was because of the strange devil fruit, and it was Doflamingo who spread the news. It is no wonder that he is so scared. Now, that 100 Beast Kaido is strangely close to the stronghold of the Don Quixote pirates. If a war breaks out, the Don Quixote pirates will be annihilated in an instant. According to Dustless's inference, this is the fundamental reason why Doflamingo risked his life to come to Mariewa. This, it's true, Kaido, that bastard. Doflamingo nodded gloomily, and his eyes flashed with surprise. Since Dustless knew the cause of the situation so well, It meant that he had sent people to investigate in advance. Doflamingo was also very envious of his ability to foresee the future. Every time, he would be able to look down on the development of the situation from the most appropriate angle with the attitude of a winner. I already know your intentions, and there is no problem in sheltering you and your pirates, but Wu Chun didn't beat around the bush. He got straight to the point and said, "Everything is about benefits and harm. It's hard for me to agree to offend Kaido for you, and I won't gain anything from it. I think you also understand that those legendary pirates will not let you go just because of the name of Tenryubido." After that, Dustless chose to be silent. The words have been said so thoroughly, and Doflamingo, who has been fighting for several years, certainly understands what it means. Chapter 467. Doflamingo breathed a sigh of relief when he heard this. He was really afraid that Dustless would beat around the bush, and he was prepared for this. It was impossible for him to offend Dustless just because they were of the same race. No one would take risks if there were no benefits. This is my bargaining chip. With a confident smile, Doflamingo reluctantly took out the design that he had kept for many years. The worn paper had some holes and wax yellow. It was obviously an antique from many years ago. Some of the precise data and words on it attracted Dustless's attention. Pluto, the king of hell. How can this guy have Pluto's design? Shouldn't it be the legendary king, Ulanos? Dustless's eyes widened, and his face was full of strangeness. Dustless, who has read a lot of history of Mariewa, knows that in the ancient times, Water 7 built the most evil super battleship in history, Pluto. As for the specific reason for building Pluto, there is no detailed record. Dustless guessed that it should be used in some kind of war. It is not difficult to see from the design that the construction of Pluto is a time-consuming and labor-consuming project. It takes several years. Such a huge project is obviously impossible to be used for viewing and showing off. Dustless is not interested in what urgent things happened in the ancient times. The only thing that puzzles him is why Pluto's design appeared in Doflamingo's hands. "I got this from the old man Tom in Water 7. Doflamingo replied in an extremely unnatural manner as he dodged Dustless's questioning gaze. Clearly, he was deliberately concealing the truth. It seems that there is more than one design of Pluto. At least he can be sure that there is more than one design of Pluto. No one knows if there are other designs of Pluto around the world. This is the power to destroy the world." Doflamingo's eyes were full of fanaticism. Pluton is a super weapon with the name of God. It is said that just a casual shot can make an island disappear from the sea and raise it. Its power is unprecedented, and even Mariewa and Marine headquarters can easily flatten it. Doflamingo's voice was filled with endless charm, bewitching Dustless's rationality. After a while, Dustless only sneered in response. The power to destroy the world? That was indeed the case, but right now, it was just a theoretical blueprint. Whether or not it could be built was still a big question mark. A straightforward person does not resort to insinuations. Just a Pluto's design is enough to make it difficult for me to protect you. Shaking his head, Doflamingo's design did not move his heart. He couldn't even raise his thoughts. "You want to play this game?" With a wave of his hand, Doflamingo shattered the exquisite stone table in front of him. He was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He didn't expect Dustless to have such a black-on-black attribute. His old face was twitching, and he glared at Dustless. The cold, murderous intent appeared on his face. The Pluto's design was put away by him, and now he's trying to get something for nothing. Presumptuous, how dare you? Don't forget your identity. And where is this place? Hancock stared at Doflamingo, and a majestic, collapsing energy fluctuation erupted from her tender body. The hot air wave was no different from an erupting volcano, and it was unusually hot. The tyrannical power just gathered on Doflamingo, indicating that he should not act rashly. Otherwise, he would have to bear the consequences. This woman is actually using Haushika Haki. Doflamingo's eyes were filled with astonishment, and his face was full of disbelief. This dress is obviously a maid, but she has the quality of a king. How can he not be surprised? Especially this Haoshiku. Although it is not as good as him, it has obviously reached a level where it can be used flexibly. A mere servant has such ability, and it also indirectly shows how unfathomable the strength of the master who controls her is. Could it be that he is an unprecedentedly absurd thought suddenly appeared in his mind, and an unprecedentedly terrifying thought was born along with it? The corners of his mouth trembled, and he was just about to open his mouth to ask when Wu Chen's eternal indifferent voice spread out. Doflamingo, waving his hand, he signaled Hancock to converge her aura. Wu Chen's eyes were as calm as water. He quietly looked at Doflamingo and said bluntly, "In fact, from the moment you decided to find me, it was like a sheep entering the tiger's mouth. Despicable!" With a muffled groan, Doflamingo sat back down on the sofa. Out of sight, out of mind. Despicable? It's ridiculous. Compared to you pirates who commit all kinds of crimes, I feel like I'm the incarnation of God, a kind savior of the world. More than 95% of the pirates were evil existences that raped and looted. There were only a handful of people like Luffy who were truly adventurous and wanted to fulfill their dreams. Using Pluton's blueprint in exchange for my protection, this is just your wishful thinking. In this world where the strong are respected, I can use my fist to take Pluton's blueprint by force. Wu Chan said in an extremely gentle tone. Although it was rude, it was an undeniable fact. Everyone in the world had such a way of doing things. It was like a unique order. As long as one's fist was big enough, one could snatch it by force. In fact, it's not impossible to agree to your conditions, of course, before that. There must be a condition. Seeing Doflamingo's face full of despair, Dustless smiled, and the former's heart was filled with hope. "Just say it," Doflamingo asked in a hoarse voice, trying to hide his calmness. "The request is very simple. I will not only help you solve the crisis brought by Kaido, but also help you avoid the invasion of the Marine, and even let your Don Quixote family become the king of Dressrosa again. From now on, you and your crew must stay in Dressrosa to secretly build Pluton. As for the manpower problem, I will naturally help you solve it. Chapter 468. The reason why he supported Doflamingo to become the king of Dressrosa is also a whim. It is not a problem to count on the world government to build Pluton, but the final buyer must be the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. As for Dustless, he can go wherever it is cool. There is no place for him. Doflamingo's expression solidified when he heard this, and his eyebrows were deeply squeezed together. Then he lowered his head in thought, and his eyes flashed with burning brilliance. In this way, the advantages are self-evident. He can avoid Kaido and Marine's invasion, which means that he can unilaterally face the pressure from pirates in the future. But asking him to willingly be Dustless's lackey was really forcing him to do something. The king of Dressrosa, his rough iron fist clenched, and Doflamingo's eyes were intoxicated and yearning. It seems that he has already seen the scene of him becoming a king in the future and overlooking the world. Doflamingo is a different kind of pirate. He is obsessed with the Pirate King, and he is very happy with the legendary One Piece. At the same time, because of the psychological shadow of childhood, the idea of power is deeply ingrained in his bones, and he is also the object of his enthusiasm. 800 years ago, the Don Quixote family was the original royal family of Dressrosa. If he can sit on the throne again, it can be regarded as repaying his ancestors. Maybe the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will not give him face, and it is not impossible to be humiliated. Thinking of the strength and indifference of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, his impassioned heart was poured with cold water, and his fanatical look converged, and Doflamingo muttered with uncertainty in his heart. Doflamingo has never heard of anyone who can talk face-to-face with the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, not only because the 5 of them are the highest power in the world, but also because of their earth-shaking strength. And even when the 5 of them work together, their strength is far more than 10 times that of an individual. This guy is tempted. I thought he would refuse me. Shaking his head slightly, Dustless said dully. He thought that this kid would not accept his conditions and resist hard, but he didn't expect that he would abandon his ideas and dreams so easily, which is indeed different from Dustless's expectations. On second thought, Dustless also felt relieved. Doflamingo didn't have such an unprecedented dream now. The current him was just a rat crossing the street. Everyone wanted to beat him up. His identity was so simple. Whether it is the Marine headquarters, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, or 100 Beast Kaido, they all regard Doflamingo as a thorn in their eyes and can't wait to get rid of him. Now he is in a dangerous situation. Those 5 old fellows will give me some face. Dustless explained with a chuckle after seeing through Doflamingo's hidden concern at a glance. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. The Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars is 5 Elder Stars is Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars is Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Actually, not Dare 2's. Gorosei's Kaido not. S Gorosei, Kaido. In the future, he will recruit Doflamingo in the way of Shichibukai to explain everything silently. If I can be the king of Dressrosa again and get rid of the Marine and 100 Beast Kaido. The hesitation in his eyes was replaced by determination, and Doflamingo gritted his teeth and said with hatred, I can help you build Pluton and turn this world upside down. In the end, Doflamingo almost roared out. It seems that only in this way can he vent the infinite anger and gloom in his heart. People under the eaves have to bow their heads. If he does not comply with Dustless's conditions, he may not even be able to step out of Mariehua, and the only ending is death. His body is like a willow fluttering in the wind. Only a few words, but it is the true portrayal of Doflamingo today. It's not a day's work to make Pluton. I once asked someone to estimate that even with the participation of powerful scientists, it will take more than 10 or even 20 years to complete. This is the case when all the facilities are complete. Otherwise, it can only be extended indefinitely. Doflamingo said, truthfully, Pluton's exaggeration is beyond imagination. Its basic outline is larger than some islands, and it also needs a huge dock and various facilities. The most important thing is that without the participation of powerful scientists, the foundation of more than 10 or 20 years will be regressed indefinitely. Those precise data are not something that pirates like them can understand. That's true. We must have a strong scientific research team. Dustless nodded in agreement. Doflamingo doesn't understand, and he doesn't understand. Vegapunk? Doflamingo tentatively suggested as he thought of the world's most powerful mind. Doflamingo also recognized his position. At least he has no plans to leave Dustless. There is Dustless in front of him, the world government behind him, and the Marine headquarters in the middle. What kind of situation is self-evident? There is no need. Others will do. Vegapunk's goal is too big. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that there is no need to do so. Vegapunk is too conspicuous. Technology is production. This sentence is vividly reflected in him, and the role he plays is even more than that of a Marine admiral. Caesar Kalong is on the same level as Vegapunk. Caesar Kalong, known as the number 2, is actually the same genius. His scientific talent is not worse than Vegapunk, and this kid also has a record of doing evil experiments. He designed Pluton, an unprecedented super battleship. After learning about it, he will probably send himself to the door. Hearing this, Doflamingo had a strange look on his face. It was not that he had never heard of the mad scientist Caesar Kalong. If it were not for the fact that the current situation was too dangerous, he would have captured Caesar to conduct another experiment. Although his brain is sick and unreliable, he is indeed a top scientist who can compete with Vegapunk. Doflamingo replied truthfully, and he couldn't help admiring Dustless's ability to listen to everything. For him, who was born at the top of the world, Caesar Kalong is just a tiny grain of sand. Chapter 469. Everyone's life has a period of ups and downs, and now was exactly the unfavorable period for Caesar. As a top scientist of the government, he was suppressed by Vegapunk, a super existence. Caesar and Vegapunk had accumulated resentment for a long time, and they were like fire and water. Because of Caesar's extreme personality, Vegapunk was hostile and disgusted with him. People who walk different paths cannot work together. This also led to differences of opinion between the two. Vegapunk's status was higher than Caesar's, and the one who would fail in the end would definitely be him. I heard that he was locked up in prison a while ago. With a bright face, Dustless looked at his thumb rhythmically and said calmly, "Although a prison break is rare, it is not unique. Every year, fugitives escape from prison. Other people can escape from prison, and so can Caesar." These words undoubtedly meant that Dustless wanted to help Caesar escape from prison. Although with Dustless's current identity, he could even bail Caesar out, the impact of it would be unparalleled. A person with a long lifespan colluding with the world's craziest scientist, not only would the world have wild and fanciful thoughts, but the 5 Elder Stars would also get to the bottom of it. At that time, it would inevitably cause trouble, and it would also attract countless spies and trouble. The development and construction of Pluto, this kind of crazy plan, would be destroyed if it was exposed to the public. Even if the 5 Elder Stars were as magnanimous as the sky, they still couldn't tolerate it. The place where Caesar is imprisoned is the Deep Sea Prison. It has been built for decades, and the only one who escaped was the fallen golden lion Shiki. Doflamingo laughed sarcastically when he heard the words. His tone was very casual and exaggerated. Obviously, he didn't mean what he said. As long as he had Dustless's cooperation, it would not be difficult to help Caesar escape from prison. The original prison warden was called Shilyu of the Rain. He was powerful and had amazing swordsmanship, but he was a bloodthirsty person. In the end, he was forcibly imprisoned. The current warden was called Magellan, and he was also very strong. Many years ago, Doflamingo had been eyeing Caesar, this fat sheep. When he was locked up in the deep sea prison, Doflamingo's plan to rescue Caesar was also put on the stage, and there was already a detailed process. In fact, it's not difficult to get Caesar out of hell, as long as you cooperate. Raising his eyelids, Dustless looked at Doflamingo indifferently and said without care, "The word cooperate is meaningless. Just invade directly." Without hesitation, Dustless vetoed Doflamingo's proposal and said in a carefree manner, "This is indeed the case." Doflamingo was startled at first, but soon agreed. If Dustless were to join the team, the so-called cooperation would indeed be unnecessary. There would be no need to go through the trouble of formulating a detailed evolution. All they needed to do was to charge around recklessly. "You've misunderstood my meaning. I'm not the one who did it." Shaking his head, Dustless did not plan to do it himself. This kind of hard work could be left to his subordinates. There was no need for him to do it himself. Hearing this, Doflamingo's face twitched. He suddenly felt that it was extremely difficult to converse with Dustless. This trustworthy boss always liked to keep people in suspense. With the power of the Don Quixote pirates alone, attacking the deep-sea prison is no different from looking for death, and if they can't clean up the mess quickly, the highest combat power of the Marine headquarters should come in person. "Don't worry, someone will cooperate with you." Seeing Doflamingo's eyes flickering, Dustless smiled mysteriously. At the same time, a bare-chested man with only a simple black skin slowly walked out of the dark space. His amber eyes were extremely sharp, no different from an eagle's. The sharp black knife on his back flickered with a cold light. His eyes emitted a faintly discernible sharp sword aura, making Doflamingo's hair stand on end. He was on guard against the mysterious newcomer. He felt an unprecedented threat and oppression from this man, who suddenly appeared. Looking closely, it was the great pirate Hawkeye Mihawk. "Why are you in Mariewa? Aren't you a prisoner pursued by the government?" "Hawkeye." Seeing the appearance of Hawkeye, Doflamingo looked gloomy, and the killing intent in his tone was undisguised. "You are not wanted by the government. Why are you here?" Hawkeye asked Doflamingo softly as he leaned against the wall. Seeing this, Dustless cast an interested look. It was not difficult to hear from the tone of the two of them that there should have been some kind of unknown grievance at some point in the past. After a little silence, Dustless was too lazy to ask more. There are inextricable relationships between the great pirates. Whether it's grievances or old hatred, now we are teammates in the same trench. I hate traitors the most, and I hate despicable villains who stab people in the back. The grievances of the past are gone today. If this was known by Dustless's teammates in the last world, they would vomit blood and die, because the person who is the best at cheating his teammates is himself. After saying that, Wu Chen's domineering aura gushed out. The spacious room shifted, and he came to another space-time. In an instant, the gravity was dozens of times higher. It was as difficult as climbing a mountain to move. Ka. The delicate floor shattered into granules, causing Hancock, a maid, to have a big headache. She doesn't know how many times the Lois family has changed the floor. Under the influence of this monstrous aura, any thoughts of disobedience would be easily obliterated on the spot. Doflamingo felt his scalp tingle. Under the shadow of death that he had never experienced before, he could not muster up any thoughts of resistance. Doflamingo is not afraid of life and death, but if he dies so miserably, it will be another matter. How Shikahaki? Hawkeye's sharp eyes flashed with surprise, and he lowered his head and was silent. His eyes quietly spread and took Hawkeye and Hancock into his eyes. Doflamingo's cold and dead heart was strangely hot, and even his face was flushed with morbid excitement. This team that I joined at the last minute can really fulfill my dream and turn this world upside down. Chapter 470. Suddenly feeling that his dream of the future may become a reality, Doflamingo was also enraptured for a while. Even Dustless and the silent Hawkeye were forgotten by him. The whole world became his stage. In the world in front of him, there are very few people who can really see through fame and fortune. Not everyone is like Dustless, who can be as calm as water, pure of heart, and few desires, to the extent that fame is nothing. All pirates want to be famous in the world, and their names spread all over the world. Doflamingo is like this, and Hawkeye is no exception. If one day the world wants to take away his title of the world's greatest swordsman, he will bet all his dignity to defend his glory. It's still daytime. It's too early to go to bed. It's not time to dream. Raising his eyelids, Hawkeye ridiculed Doflamingo, who was immersed in his fantasy. His tone was as light as autumn water. Looking at the expressionless Dustless, Hawkeye was seriously observing the old drawings. Hawkeye was extremely puzzled. Doflamingo's ambition could swallow the heavens and swallow the earth. He didn't think that such a dangerous person was worth cooperating with. So that's how it is it for that? Hawkeye, who has excellent eyesight, saw the outline of the drawings in Dustless's hands at a glance. Although he doesn't understand the precise data, he knows the eye-catching big words Pluto. Ancient weapon design drawings. Dream? That's nonsense, Hawkeye. Doflamingo laughed wildly. His gloomy laughter spread, full of longing for the future. Fantasizing about the future in advance. How can it be a dream? A person without dreams. What's the difference between him and a salted fish? Too shallow, Hawkeye. After saying that, Doflamingo laughed even more savagely. His laughter was unbridled and unbridled. Everyone was just a spectator. I'm sorry. I'm not interested in your boring dreams. Hawkeye glanced at Doflamingo as lightly as a feather and said in a dull tone. There was no common ground between those who walked different paths. He and Doflamingo were never on the same path. It was only because of the existence of Dustless that he walked into the same trench as Doflamingo. That was all. Pedantic. Seeing that Hawkeye didn't understand the situation, Doflamingo also closed his mouth. He just joined this group, and both Hancock and Hawkeye faintly rejected him. The atmosphere became strangely silent. 3 pairs of eyes looked at Dustless in silence. Although Doflamingo was talkative, he and Hawkeye were not like-minded and could not speak together. As for the maid Hancock, it was even more impossible. Hawkeye and Doflamingo, go and find Caesar. Remember to do it cleanly. Kill everyone who has seen your faces. After a moment of silence, Dustless said coldly. The implication is nothing more than that. Whether it is a marine or a pirate who sees their true faces, they will all be killed. Hearing this, Doflamingo and Hawkeye both nodded. The two of them were not indecisive people. Anyone who saw their faces would naturally die. After rescuing Caesar, where will he be placed? He is a famous mad scientist. Doflamingo asked expectantly, with a different meaning. He hoped that Doflamingo could sit on the throne of Dressrosa and arrange for Caesar to stay in Dressrosa. At that time, he would be able to fulfill his dream, and his crew, who were like family members, would be able to recuperate. Their days of being a fugitive at sea would also be over. It's too early. Like a heavy blow, Dustless did not hesitate to refuse Doflamingo. Doflamingo's mouth squirmed, and he intended to refute, but Dustless's face was cold, and the words that had been brewing in his throat for a long time were choked into his stomach. Thinking about it, Doflamingo felt relieved. It was impossible to directly ask Dressrosa's Liku royal family to leave, and the latter would obediently give up the throne and leave. The Liku royal family was loved and respected by the local people, and their support was very strong. The materials needed to build Pluton are huge. It's not too late to take Dressrosa after collecting all the materials. According to the degree of exaggeration of the design, the area of Pluton is as large as the island, and the various kinds of equipment needed can be imagined. The most important factor is that Dustless wants to wait until Doflamingo becomes a Shichibukai before occupying Dressrosa. In this way, he doesn't need to personally open the umbrella for Doflamingo. When attacking the impel down of the deep-sea prison, I have something for you, Dustless said with a hoarse smile. Suddenly, there was a flash of inspiration in his mind. Dustless wrote a bunch of unflattering words and motioned to Hancock to wrap it with an envelope. Although puzzled, Hancock nodded seriously and walked towards the dark corridor. Hawkeye and Doflamingo were startled by this scene. They looked at Dustless with a dark smile on his face. They didn't need to think to know that this wasn't a good thing. Time is up. You go to rescue Caesar. Remember not to be recognized by others. Anyone who sees your true appearance will be killed without mercy. Waving his hand, Dustless suddenly ordered them to leave. Hawkeye and Doflamingo didn't talk nonsense. After looking at each other with tacit understanding, they also left the corridor where Hancock left. In the brightly lit room, there was only Dustless sitting alone. After the sound of shoes twisting disappeared completely, Dustless opened his eyes, no longer clear, full of puzzlement and confusion. Looking carefully at the design of Pluton in his hand, and after confirming it from head to toe, Dustless looked more gloomy, and there was a hint of killing intent. This is undoubtedly the design of Pluton, but the design in front of him was very different from what he expected, and even contrary to his original conjecture, and the content of the design subverted Dustless's cognition. But the most important factor was missing. Chapter 471. Carefully reading Pluton's blueprint, Dustless keenly realized that something was wrong. All kinds of data were not lacking, but one thing he cared about most was missing. The so-called surgeon fruit is not needed to start Pluton, which also indirectly shows that Pluton has nothing to do with the so-called Mariehua national treasure. It's really disappointing. After a moment of silence, Dustless sighed. He had been busy for a long time. Except for the ancient weapon blueprint, everything else was still the same. What is Doflamingo deliberately hiding? White Zetsu, who poked his head out, asked with a little disgust in his tone. Doflamingo gives people the feeling that he is an extremely evil existence. Others still pay attention to bottom lines and principles, but he has no bottom line in dealing with people. It's like wearing the coat of a demon. It's completely dark inside. As long as the benefits are enough, he can betray at any time. Impossible. I can see that this blueprint has not been tampered with, and he doesn't have the courage to lie to me. Shaking his head resolutely, Dustless can be 100% sure of the authenticity of the map. Since Doflamingo dared to come to the door so openly, it meant that his subordinates had investigated Dustless. At the very least, they knew Dustless's temperament. Doflamingo also knew what would happen if they tried to fool him with fake goods. To some extent, Dustless is more ferocious than the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. Perhaps the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, did not dare to touch him because of Pluton's blueprint. If it was Dustless, this trick would not have any effect. Still quietly waiting for Caesar's news, standing up, the exhaustion spread all over his body. When he was about to go to bed, a supernatural energy fluctuation suddenly spread out. Ka ka ka. There was a violent vibration throughout Mariewa. Even hundreds of meters away from the center, Dustless could feel a heavy blow that tore the ground. Several energy fluctuations that were enough to crush the sky suddenly descended. The sleepy eyes were replaced by gloominess in an instant, and Dustless's eyes emitted a soul-stirring light. These dangerous breaths were all Haushikahaki. Dustless tidied up his messy clothes and walked quickly to the balcony. The restless Haki has Doflamingo and Hawkeye. Could it be? Staring at the void that was torn to pieces in the distance, Dustless looked calm. Hawkeye and Doflamingo were obviously at a disadvantage, and it was self-evident who in Mariewa had reached this level of strength. Looking up, the void hundreds of miles ahead had been torn apart, and in the air, there was only a dark abyss, and the narrow and long cracks almost encompassed the entire Mariewa. The gigantic dark crack was large enough to devour everything in the world. The power that made one's heart palpitate lingered around it, as if an invisible hand was constantly pulling the surface area of the abyss. What do those 5 old men mean by this? Dustless's eyes flashed with killing intent. His entire body turned into resplendent light particles, and his original body disappeared. He turned into a straight beam of light and whizzed out. In the blink of an eye, his speed was so fast that it was hard for the naked eye to catch him. Hey, what do you 5 old men mean by this? On the sunken ground, Doflamingo was on guard against the 5 figures in front of him, and there was a little regret in his eyes, and he secretly scolded himself for being too reckless. Doflamingo, I should have made an agreement with you before. You're gambling with your life. The old man with the sword said with killing intent, and looking at his line of sight, the broken limbs were clearly visible, and there was almost no human appearance. However, it is not difficult to see from the fragments of these people's clothes and the air cover that has not burst yet. They are celestial dragons. Celestial dragons was his former identity, and now he is just a pirate who commits all kinds of crimes. A pirate is always a pirate, and his nature is always difficult to change. This time, we will kill him on the spot and save the celestial dragons from trouble. The 5 old men with blonde hair said with killing intent, and the oppression overflowing from his strong body was desperate. Ka, ka, ka. The clothes all over his body burst apart, revealing a strong body, and the regular abdominal muscles of his abdomen were clearly visible. Obviously, he and Garp are both strong people who have reached the limit of physical strength. This is bad. Hawkeye's heart fell to the bottom. These 5 people are not what he and Doflamingo can deal with. If the 5 of them come together, they may end the battle in just a few minutes. The scene gradually heated up, and both sides were just silent momentum. When the scene was about to go out of control, a cold voice stopped the outcome that was about to get out of control. There is no doubt that it is Dustless who came. 5, please give me an explanation. Golden photons converged from all directions, slowly condensed and compressed, and finally turned into a cold figure, staring at the 5 old men with a bad face, and the blame in his tone was undisguised. The 5 old men clearly knew that Hawkeye was their subordinate, but they still blocked him, making it clear that they wanted to slap him in the face. Explanation? You came at the right time. We also need an explanation from you. Lewis South, Holy. Pointing to the dismembered body of the celestial dragon on the ground, the bald 5 old men who were most familiar with Dustless coldly asked, Doflamingo, this guy is too bold. Before entering the Holy Land, I had made 3 rules with him. This kid even dared to take an inch and take a mile. Who gave him the right to do so? The harsh words made the corner of Dustless's mouth twitch, and his face was gloomy. He looked at Hawkeye, and the latter nodded slightly, tacitly admitting that the 5 old men were telling the truth. Dustless, who wanted to punish the 5 old men, was particularly depressed. When I was in trouble, their family sent people to kill me. Now that the luck has changed, I will take the opportunity to teach them a little lesson. Shrugging his shoulders casually, Doflamingo replied indifferently, standing behind Dustless, and said with a smile. The frivolous behavior of the villain made the 5 old men's killing intent even more intense. Chapter 472. Turning his head, revealing half of his face to look at Doflamingo, Dustless released his clenched fist, and the vigorous power accumulated in his body also dissipated. The broken limbs of the celestial dragons on the ground silently explained everything. All in all, they were in the wrong first. This kid is as cunning as a rabbit. Dustless couldn't help admiring in his heart. Doflamingo said that it was revenge, and it was indeed possible. But according to Dustless's guess, he wanted to test himself in disguise. He wanted to verify the relationship between the 5 Elder Stars and Dustless. Giving them a small lesson is to slaughter all of them? Son of a concubine, your so-called big lesson is really something to look forward to. Stepping forward, the 5 Elder Stars with a birthmark on his forehead asked with killing intent. He had warned Doflamingo not to act rashly before, but this kid was still so arrogant that he killed people in broad daylight. It was really hateful. The strange purple flames lingered behind him, and his whole person was shrouded in purple mist. Combined with his fierce face, even the arrogant Doflamingo instinctively moved behind Dustless. His movements were so subtle that they did not leave any traces. Everyone present had looks of disdain on their faces. The dead are gone, and the dead can't be resurrected. It's better to sit down and discuss how to deal with the aftermath. With a modest smile on the corner of his mouth, Dustless said softly with a bit of magnetism. It was also a disguised concession. Upon seeing this, the 5 honored stars looked at each other and could see the strangeness in each other's eyes. In their eyes, Wu Chun had always been the kind of person who was extremely strong and arrogant. Now, this kind of gentle and refined time to talk reason was rarely seen. Doflamingo's eyes flashed with a hidden color, and he looked at the 5 Elder Stars every move. He was silent. He didn't expect Dustless's deterrence to be so great. If it weren't for the existence of Dustless, he would have been burned into nothingness by the strange purple flames. The 5 of you, please give me some face and let this matter pass. Dustless took in a deep breath of cold air and said calmly. His tender body stood in front of Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Among them, only Dustless was the shortest, and only his body was skinny. He looked the least authoritative, but in fact, it was the opposite. The faces of the 5 Elder Stars, however, froze, which was the complete opposite of their ungrateful attitude towards Hawkeye and Doflamingo. Lois South Saint, I'm sorry, but I don't think you're that important. The 5 Elder Stars, who had long hair and beard and were extremely wise, shook their heads in denial. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. If anyone dares to trample on the law and justice, the world government will become air, and the law and order made by the 5 Elder Stars will also become a joke. They're already so old, yet they're still taking advantage of their seniority. What a bunch of cunning old men. Dustless's expression loosened as he cursed inwardly. The 5 of them in front of him were all old foxes who had been in the officialdom for many years. They were good at deceiving people. In the whole world, there were very few people who could compete with them. I can guarantee that the celestial dragons will not trouble you. The corner of his mouth raised a confident arc. After Dustless killed the celestial dragons last time, his notoriety had spread. Hearing this, the 5 Elder Stars were in a deadlock. It was undeniable that Dustless did have this ability. They looked at each other and could see the surprise in each other's eyes. They wanted to take this opportunity to kill Doflamingo, but they didn't expect Dustless to stand up for this pest. This guy, Doflamingo, was expressionless when he saw this, but his heart was furious. Countless blue veins on his forehead were surging and tumbling, and a sense of shame arose spontaneously. The 5 elder stars didn't put him in their eyes at all, but regarded him as a fat sheep waiting to be slaughtered, or simply a bargaining chip to threaten Dustless. This still won't work. The golden-haired 5 elder stars shook his head, and his silent momentum broke out again. A powerful wave of destruction broke out from his body. The other 4 were not careless, and their haki, which was majestic enough to crush the void, spread out unscrupulously. This is what you asked for. Seeing this, Dustless just sneered again and again. His deep pupils turned into scarlet eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and the dark blue substantialized evil chakra was ready to go, like a god or a demon. Decaying, the aura unique to the wild broke out of his body, covering the void, and the dark blue light covered the entire Mariewa, making people unable to put up the slightest resistance. The hazy dark blue shadow suddenly descended, and as the mysterious energy fluctuations hidden in Dustless's body continued to erupt, the shadow became more and more solid. The giant, which was 500 or 600 feet high, was looming, and as long as Dustless gave the order, the ferocious giant would become real. So high. The bald 5 elder stars holding the sword was shocked, and his eyes were full of shock. For the first time in many years, ripples appeared in his heart, which was calm like an ancient well, and he was shrouded by the evil wave, and his soul trembled. Even his body trembled uncontrollably. The giant's eyes made him feel powerless, and the ancient long sword at his waist was filled with an indescribable force. Before it was out of his body, the panic of all things being destroyed spread over all creatures. So I should be qualified, right? Dustless asked with a playful smile on the corner of his mouth. The 5 elder stars' faces all changed when they heard this, and their fists were sweating, but they did not dare to do anything. In the world where the strong are respected, the words and deeds of the people with bigger fists are the reason and order. Does Louis South Saint really want to fight to the death? That won't do any good to either side. The white-haired 5 elder stars frowned and said in a deep voice. There was a hint of helplessness in his tone. The 5 of them had joined forces. They were confident that they could use their secret move to drag Wu Chun to hell. However, the price they had to pay was also difficult to bear. All in all, the result of fighting is to kill 1,000 of the enemy and lose 800 of their own. They will also be injured, and it will be too late to extend their lives. How can they dislike that their lives are too long? I naturally know that it's not good to do this, but I just think it's better this way. You're right. Chapter 473. If possible, Dustless didn't want to cause more trouble, but these 5 old men seemed to be used to being high and mighty. They had developed a bad habit of bossing people around. Spoiling them would only lead to enmity. Ka-ka-ka. The sound of bones combining sounded. The crackling sound was particularly pleasant to the ears. The giant shadow became more solid, and the majestic oppression became more intense. The 5 honored stars' hearts were gloomy and dead silent. Looking up, they saw many solid bones in the dark blue shadow. The monster with 2 heads and 4 arms could be clearly seen. It ends here. The 5 honored stars, who had a head full of white curly hair, wore a flat hat, and had a scar on the left side of his face, made the final decision. Obviously, he didn't want to shed all pretense of cordiality with Dustless over such a low-class character like Doflamingo. In the end, we're all family. His cold gaze was somewhat restrained. When it swept across Doflamingo, it flashed with a touch of disdain. The silent mockery seemed to be saying that a lackey would always be a lackey and would never amount to anything. Doflamingo's face was full of indifference. He looked at him with a sinister smile, completely fearless. It's indeed not worth making a big fuss over an ant. Casually glancing at Doflamingo, the 5 honored stars left one after another. In their hearts, they were already very certain that Dustless had stood up to protect Doflamingo at the crucial moment, because Pluto's blueprint had fallen into his hands. Otherwise, with Dustless's status and strength, there is absolutely no possibility of him saving him. It's indeed not worth it for both sides to suffer. Louis South Saint is still a member of our government. We can't do stupid things like killing each other, but we can be sure that Pluto's design blueprint has fallen into his hands. The 5 honored stars with long hair and beard analyzed wisely. His eyes were deep and shining. One wouldn't get up early if there were no benefits. Human nature was so greedy for benefits. This was an eternal and unchanging law. Only Pluto's design blueprint could move Dustless. In this case, we should snatch it even more. The 5 honored stars with a birthmark on their forehead said with a hoarse voice, with longing and longing. As the highest authority in the world, they knew better than anyone else how terrifying the Netherworld King was. He was a true world-destroying divine weapon, many times more powerful than the so-called kinetic rock. Flattening an island was a piece of cake. Using this artifact to crush the rule of the celestial dragons, and then they would establish themselves as kings and establish a new order of ruler of the people. The whole world would be sublimated, and it would be the happiness of the world's people. That's for sure. However, it's still too early. Right now, it's just a tattered blueprint. The best time for us to make our move will be when it's out in the open. The 5 honored stars with the scar on their foreheads laughed sinisterly. Even if the Pluton King blueprint fell into their hands now, it would be meaningless. It would take them 10 to 20 years to build it. Dustless built it first, and in the end, they would reap the benefits. Then, they would drive Dustless's Hades and destroy him. Nothing could be more ironic. There is absolutely no need to engage in a meaningless fight to the death, especially if they were unable to obtain victory in the end. Instead, they would end up with heavy injuries or even death. The Marine doesn't seem to agree with our proposal. With a sudden turn of the conversation, the bald Gorosei brought the problem back to the Marine headquarters and sighed helplessly. Almost all of them showed their opposition. The Shichibukai plan is still too early to be introduced. The Marine and the pirates are natural enemies. There is no possibility of cooperation between the two. The fierce rebound of the Marine is also within their expectations. So what, they're useless? The blonde Gorosei sneered. It was the government who drew up the plan. In the final analysis, it was because the Marine was too useless. They could drive side by side with the pirates, and there was no need to make such a ridiculous plan as Shichibukai. After all, this is tantamount to slapping their own face. The world government is dressed in the cloak of justice, but also gives pirates the power to loot legally. The sense of support is bound to decline. They don't want to use such a plan that hurts others and hurts themselves. It's no different from digging their own grave. The reason why the plan of Shichibukai was drawn from Dustless and Hawkeye. It was the most effective and direct way to suppress pirates with the power of pirates. It's really difficult to get them to join forces. The Gorosei nodded thoughtfully. The pirates were easy to say, but the Marine was full of complaints. Their former teammates fell under the pirates' bayonet. It's human nature to not accept it. That's not up to the warring states. The plan of Shichibukai is imperative. On the Blue Sea, the Don Quixote pirates moved slowly. Their speed was quite slow, and they looked leisurely, not at all anxious to escape. Young master, that guy. Inside the cabin, Treble looked worriedly at Doflamingo, who had a relaxed and calm expression on his face. After glancing at Hawkeye outside the cabin, he thought about the route they were sailing on. His head felt like it was made of glue, and the sky turned dark. Hawkeye used to have an old hatred with them, and now he has become a close partner. Even if his nerves are jumping, he can't keep up with the incredible scene in front of him. Deep sea prison, impelled down, it's no different from dying directly. There's no need to worry with that man. Impelled down is a fat lamb outside the sheep pen. Squinting his eyes, Doflamingo's eyes emitted a dangerous light. The light of the tiger and the wolf is enough to devour everything. Now temporarily submitting to Dustless is just a prelude to a great future. Caesar is an indispensable fatal link. Even if it's not for the temporary boss Dustless, he must take the ultimate chess piece of him, Caesar Calon, for himself in the future. Opening the window, looking at the heavily guarded island in the distance, Doflamingo's wild and unruly laughter rang out. Let's flatten Impel down. Chapter 474. Deep Sea Prison, Impel Down. There are countless big pirates imprisoned here. Some disappeared and became legendary big pirates. They are all imprisoned here and live a dark life. To some extent, Impel Down is a hell on earth, isolated from the world. People who enter here want to come out alive. Except for Golden Lion Shiki, it is impossible for others. The current chief guard, Magellan, was a Paramecia's poisonous fruit ability user. Because he was a poisonous man, the breath he exhaled was poisonous, and the food that reached his mouth would also be poisoned unintentionally. Therefore, every time the poison was too strong, his body would not be able to withstand it, causing diarrhea, but he would not die. This also causes him to spend most of the day in the toilet. The fruit ability is strong, but the side effects are also ridiculous. In the dark environment, Magellan, who had just washed his hands, laughed bitterly at himself. Other devil fruits have side effects, but his poisonous fruit is an exception. The exhalation is poisonous, and the food in his mouth is poisonous. He has diarrhea for at least 10 hours every day. Gulp. The stomach that had been empty for a long time immediately revolted, and the hunger rose uncontrollably. He quickened his pace and was about to go back to eat and drink. The sudden loud noise made his mind stop thinking. Boom, boom, boom. The walls of the deep-sea prison, which were made of special materials and extremely hard, collapsed and turned into rubble and debris. The dark green light easily penetrated a huge hole in the wall. It should have been a dark prison, but a warm ray of dawn shone in. Magellan, who has been active in the dark for many years, was unusually uncomfortable. He turned his head, and the dazzling sun made him instinctively stretch out his rough old hands in front of his eyes. Through the small gap between the 5 fingers, several figures could be vaguely seen. Who is it? These mysterious people who suddenly appeared made Magellan nervous, and the heavy coat covered the body, and it was impossible to identify their specific appearance. Even so, the vigorous breath and the previous slash made Magellan feel a fatal threat. It could be concluded that the group of people who came from the sky in front of him are all masters. Who is it? TSK. Has the constant diarrhea drained your brain? Invading Impel Down is, of course, to rob the prisoners. Without waiting for Magellan to react, several transparent lines that could not be captured by the naked eye whizzed out like cannonballs. The purpose was exactly the same as the bullets. The target was Magellan. Ordinary people couldn't catch these thin lines, but Magellan, one of the 2 strongest men in the deep-sea prison, could sense them clearly. Ability user. What sharp lines. Seeing this, Magellan did not dare to be careless. The other party had the advantage in numbers. For the sake of caution, he still chose to jump and avoid the attack of these thin lines. Bang, 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 a series of explosions followed. The sturdy walls that made up the deep-sea prison were extremely fragile. They burst open and fist-sized holes appeared. Dust scattered in all directions, and the ground was also covered with dust. There is no doubt that the group of people who invaded Impel Down was Hawkeye and the Don Quixote pirates. Go and search every house. Find that man, Caesar, even if you have to dig 10 feet into the ground. Doflamingo, who was wearing a heavy coat, ordered. He had a deep obsession with Caesar. The members of the Don Quixote pirates nodded and then walked towards the promenade deep in the prison. Want to rescue the prisoners? It's best that you die here in peace. Seeing that the big man in the cotton-padded coat ignored his existence, Magellan's killing intent was awe-inspiring. Purple liquid flowed out of his back, and there was a strange boiling gas. The venom was compressed and formed into 3 terrible venom dragons. In the blink of an eye, the venom dragons swayed their bodies unscrupulously, and anything that touched them would be eroded and decayed. So that's how it is. I didn't expect Impel Down to hide. Such an extraordinary character. The Marines are really talented. A slightly surprised sigh sounded, and then the green light suddenly shone brightly. A tyrannical slash came out, and the ground was pulled into a bottomless crack, as if it was cutting vegetables. This chop, bastard, what is your purpose in invading Impel Down? Perceiving the strength of the emerald light, Magellan's face changed, and an angry roar accompanied by a strange red light spread, and a substantial giant composed entirely of red toxins was suddenly formed. Poisonous giant soldier, Hell's Judgment. The mysterious enemies in front of him are strong beyond imagination. At present, Impel Down is temporarily closed, and there is no one who can surpass them, including the prison director who has been in office for a short time. In the face of this overbearing and unparalleled chop, he smelled a strong smell of death. It seems that you have guessed our identity. In that case, I can only let you close your eyes forever. Unlike Impel Down, Dustless, who was far away in Mariawa, was idle, lazily leaning on the sofa, leisurely tasting afternoon tea. The Marines won't bother you for at least the next few years, but they still have to hide. Although I'm sorry for you, according to the current situation, they can only develop like this. After a long silence, Dustless said, looking around, there was no one in the spacious and bright room. I understand this. I have adapted to this life of desperation. In the dark corner, a young but strong voice came out. The tone did not match the age, but with an indescribable vicissitudes of life. Following the sound, there was a depressing darkness, and only the outline of a young child could be vaguely observed. From his clear and melodious voice, it was easy to tell that the person who spoke was a young girl. Chapter 475. The dark space covered the girl's face like an invisible coat. Under the observation of Dustless's abnormal visual ability, the peerless face was still reflected in the dark eyes. Maybe you were born with this fate. After a moment of silence, a complicated look flashed in his eyes. Dustless sighed with mixed feelings. The bumpy experience of the little girl in front of him was so similar to his past. His body moved and quietly fell beside the lovely girl. After carefully observing her for a long time, Dustless's casual thoughts turned into substantial action. Dustless's closed eyes opened, no longer the previous dark eyes, turned into scarlet five-pointed star eyes. With a slightly pale and indifferent face, there was no difference between him and the Grim Reaper who stepped out of hell. There was even a faint blood mist drifting behind him, which was breathtaking. The little girl's deep eyes instinctively flashed with panic, and she subconsciously stepped back until she was squeezed into the corner and couldn't retreat anymore. Then her panicked steps stopped. Don't be afraid. I'm not as terrible as you think. There is a gap between celestial dragons and Gorosei, 5 elder stars. Seeing this, Dustless with a gloomy face showed a kind smile. His gentle face warmed people's hearts. It seemed neither fish nor fowl, but it came from his heart. In fact, Dustless is not as terrible and indifferent as imagined. The premise of all this is not to touch his bottom line. Of course, touching his bottom line is another matter. Those who dare to challenge his bottom line, Dustless will naturally tear them into pieces. The little girl slightly nodded. Her isolated heart was loosened, and she walked in front of Dustless. This is called Mangekyo Sharingan. It's one of my countless abilities. It can be regarded as my specialty. Raising his hand and pointing to his eye socket, Dustless softly introduced. Then, squatting down, the two of them maintained the same height. After staring at her for a moment, he said, "After completing the task for me, you can get your own reward and freedom. Like a normal human, you can easily bathe in the sun under the bright sky. You don't have to live a dark life." He looked directly at the little girl, and a magnetic voice appeared in his cold voice as he spoke in an extremely serious manner. Of course, there are always unexpected things in the world. The future is always changing, and accidents happen from time to time. In order for you to live well, I've decided to lend you my power temporarily. Ripples appeared in the scarlet eyes, and the dark surroundings became even colder. The evil suppression of the kaleidoscope became even stronger. "Do you mean your weird-shaped eyes?" The little girl was obviously very intelligent. She blinked her eyes and asked curiously. Her watery eyes circled around Dustless's eyes. It was the first time she had seen such a strange pair of eyes. Even though she had read a lot of books, she had never heard of a devil fruit with such an ability. "Indeed, I intend to store the ability of Mangekyo, as well as my own chakra, into your body in case I need it in the future. After all, you're the only one who can help me unravel the secret." Regardless of the little girl's resistance, his cold arm drooped on her soft little hand, and the evil but unusually strong warm energy fluctuations poured into her body. After a while, Dustless's eyes returned to their original black color, and when the weak little girl opened her eyes again, they were scarlet Sharingan. Remember, don't try to use its power unless you have no other choice. The side effects of the kaleidoscope are great. Falling unconscious is the best-case scenario, and in a serious case, it can even directly extract your vitality. Dustless said with a serious look, and his meticulous look showed that he was not joking. Forcibly using the kaleidoscope without the bloodline of the Uchiha clan will only increase the burden, especially in this young body, which may be directly swallowed up. The chakra that Dustless stored in her body was not enough to open such a powerful technique as Kinsusanu. What a strong ability! Perceiving the extraordinariness of the eyes, the little girl exclaimed, and the dark space was as clear as day. The ability of the kaleidoscope is beyond imagination. What you see is just the tip of the iceberg. Dustless explained with a slight smile, and his mind fell into memories. When he first opened the kaleidoscope, his left eye gave birth to a technique called Divine Providence, which can give any ability of his own to others, provided that the target must be a living body. When he invaded the moon, it was because of the power of the eight-tailed glint fruit that he was able to sweep across the moon. Otherwise, many years ago, Wu Chun would have died and become a skeleton on the moon, forever remaining in the universe. This technique also has limitations, and when he gives the Mangekyo Sharingan to others, Dustless himself can no longer use the ability of the Sharingan. The chakra stored in your body is limited, and if you can avoid using the kaleidoscope, try not to use it. The little girl carefully sensed that there was an inexplicable fluctuation of energy in her body, and because her body is not strong enough, the amount of energy stored is limited. In short, the reason why Dustless temporarily transferred the ability of the Mangekyo Sharingan to her is that he wants her to save her life, and using the ability of the Mangekyo Sharingan to fight is far from reaching this level. Can the conditions you promised me really be fulfilled? Thinking of the conditions of helping Dustless, the little girl asked in a trembling voice. She also has conditions for working for Dustless. Of course, I'm not shameless enough to deceive a teenage girl. Dustless replied confidently, with a calm appearance. He didn't put the conditions of the little girl in his eyes at all, and the confidence exuding from his gestures makes people involuntarily trust him. I can reverse the flow of time and bring people back to life. I'm also a god and a devil. The conditions you put forward are just a trivial matter for me. The people who have passed away in the past will stand in front of you again. Dustless, who has thousands of abilities condensed in his body. For him, there is nothing he can't do. It's only whether he wants to or not. Chapter 476. Dustless, who has Rinnegan Sharingan, comes back from the dead, is just a trivial matter for him. It is extremely simple, and it only consumes a little bit of spiritual power, which does not bother him. Perceiving the evil power in her pupils, the little girl nodded silently. She was sure that if it weren't for the suppression of the strange energy fluctuations in her body, she would have been eroded by this strong negative emotion in an instant. In the end, she would become a simple walking dead. This is Mariehua. You are still wanted by the government. I will secretly send someone to send you away. Restoring the previous indifference, Dustless said without any ripples. In his eyes, a chess piece is always a chess piece, and the hidden chess piece in front of him is just the kind that can't be lost. It is worth lending his power to her to save her life. Do I really just need to follow your plan? The little girl who was about to leave suddenly stopped and asked with some uncertainty. Thinking of Dustless's absurd plan, she couldn't help but feel strange. Now, Dustless has planned all her life for the next 20 years. How could she not be surprised? Indeed, you only need to follow what I remind you to do, and everything else is fine. Dustless also handed her a din-din mushie in case of an emergency. The plan can't keep up with the changes. What will happen in the future? Will there be unexpected situations? All of this must be prepared in advance. One wave after another, and you dare to do it so absurdly, bastard. In the office of the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral, a roar with monstrous anger resounded throughout the Marlins. Fleet Admiral Kong stared at the map angrily, and a piercing, killing intent broke out. The location marked on the map was Impelled Down. Just through the din-din mushie, the bad news of Impelled Down being invaded alarmed the entire Marine Headquarters. There is no need to be angry. Sengoku has already taken a battleship, and I believe that soon he will chase down the villains who invaded Impelled Down. Senior Staff Officer Tsuru, on the other hand, was unusually calm. After so many years of ups and downs, she had already developed a calm mentality that would not change even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of her. Well, this old man is worried about Sengoku. Soon, this hot potato will be replaced by him. I can also eat shellfish calmly like Garp in the future. Marshal Kong looked at Lieutenant General Crane in annoyance. At the same time, he glanced at Garp, who was crazily eating the shellfish. He couldn't help but give him a thumbs up and secretly praised him for his wit. It was precisely because he had repeatedly refused to be promoted to Great General that he could leisurely slack off. Sengoku is an admiral of the Marine Headquarters and is destined to work hard. Nonsense. I'm worried that the prisoners in Impelled Down will be released by those vicious invaders. With a gloomy expression, Vice Admiral Tsuru expressed the worry in her heart. Cold sweat dripped down from her old temples. The lowest level of Impelled Down was where some legendary big pirates were locked. If it was released, the world would be thrown into chaos. At this moment, Impelled Down had turned into a pile of rubble, and the fierce fighting had caused the surrounding ground to crack, irregular, and even showing signs of sinking. I really don't know what's so special about this guy. Master and Hawkeye actually value him so much. This idiot is simply his truest reflection. In the dark promenade, the Don Quixote pirates slowly moved forward, and the future leader of the Spade Army, Pika, carried a big black sack on his shoulder. The thing in the big sack was obviously vitality, and sometimes it struggled violently. Fuck, I'm the world's #1 scientist. You bastards put the world's #1 scientist in a sack. This is blasphemy. An angry voice came out of the sack, and a shrill scream made people's scalp numb. If you have the guts to untie the sea-stone handcuffs on my body, I will let you know the true meaning of devil fruit combined with science. You better be a useful person. You spent so much effort. If you get a trash, I will let you have a taste of the bomb fruit's power. Looking around, the members of the Don Quixote pirates had scars of different sizes on their bodies, all caused by rescuing the so-called world's #1 scientist. Treble, you're too slow. A middle-aged man with pink feathers came out of the darkness, his face full of arrogance and gloominess. Looking closely, it was Doflamingo. Another person hiding in the darkness with a black sword on his back is naturally Hawkeye. It's all this brat's fault for being disobedient. We spent so much effort to find him, and now he wants to kill us. After that, Pika slammed the sack on the wall and then stepped on it a few times before he was satisfied. Caesar also took the opportunity to get out of the sack. He grinned and was about to curse, but after seeing Doflamingo and Hawkeye, these two terrifying people, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. His old face flushed red. The two big pirates in front of him are so powerful that he can't afford to offend them. Is this guy Caesar? Looking at the comedic Caesar, the corner of Doflamingo's eyes twitched. He originally thought Caesar was a gentle and cultured scientist, but reality was the opposite of what he thought. His face was pale, he was dressed in a prisoner's uniform, and there were strange horns on his head. Because of Pica's previous revenge, this kid's face was swollen like a clown, which was very funny. It's time to go. It won't be long before the enemy invades. Waving his hand, the crowd simply left, and Hawkeye followed closely behind. Impelled Down, which was a big fight before, was as quiet as a dead city. The ground was flowing with a mysterious purple venom that could corrode any substance that touched it. In the center of the venom, Magellan's bloody body was clearly visible, with knife wounds and dense holes in his chest. With only a weak breath left, two fists are no match for four hands. Hawkeye and Doflamingo teamed up, and Magellan was certainly not their opponent. Chapter 477. As soon as Doflamingo and Hawkeye walked out of Impelled Down, a harsh roar came from afar. Looking up, it was countless black cannonballs. As far as the eye could see, it was a group of marine battleships and the admirals of Sengoku on the turret. If we don't want to be recognized by him, we can only escape in chaos. Doflamingo's eyes flashed with determination as he said in a deep voice, "The implication is to release all the prisoners in Impelled Down. Only in this way can they escape without being exposed. As for the prisoners in the end, they don't care about them." Hawkeye was silent, apparently agreeing with Doflamingo's approach, and only in this way can they escape. The Warring States of Buddha was a marine admiral in Roger's era, and his strength is unfathomable. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, 2 days pass quietly. On an island somewhere in the Grand Line, a thin figure stood in a ruined building, looking at the distant sea, and there were many chimpanzees around him grinning at the figure. How strange, to think that a bunch of beasts would dare to provoke me. Looking down at the big baboons below, Dustless's mouth flashed with a cold light, and his calm eyes flashed with a blazing fighting spirit. This island was destroyed by war a few years ago, and most of the people left the island to take refuge. Few people know about it, so Dustless also chose this place as a temporary stronghold. Soon, Hawkeye and Doflamingo will bring Caesar here. Mere beast, bring it on. The majestic fighting spirit spread out. Dustless knew that these big baboons have been learning human fighting skills for a long time, and their rich fighting experience is even more than that of humans. Oh! A group of big baboons apparently understood Dustless's provocation, and they immediately roared angrily and surrounded him in groups. Looking at the scale, there are no less than hundreds of them. And they seem to be here. Looking sideways, the sea in the distance suddenly had many small black spots. His pupils dilated, and the flag of the Don Quixote pirates entered Dustless's sight, including a man jumping up and down, wearing spiral stripes. Is he Caesar? Sure enough, it's exactly as I guessed. Dustless was unusually calm. In the original work, Caesar was an unusually lively and active person. At the same time, a group of baboons holding all kinds of swords and spears also charged over. They were just inches away, and their sharp sword were about to cut Dustless's body into pieces. Originally, I wanted to use this to kill time. Looks like I have to stop here. He withdrew his gaze again, and a ripple appeared in his pitch-black pupils. Suddenly, a powerful air wave swept out of the calm sky, and an invisible energy wave swept out like a wave. The formless air wave turned into a physical attack, crushing the ground under Dustless's feet into powder. The eyes of the baboons that had leaped into the air immediately turned pale white. Their mouths full of sharp teeth spat out dark red blood as they fell to the ground. Extremely fragile. Expressionlessly looking at those big baboons who had fainted, Dustless's entire body glowed with golden light. Along with a piercing sound, he disappeared like a breeze. Just in the blink of an eye, Dustless fell on the ship of the Don Quixote pirates. Who is it? The ghostly appearance of Dustless stunned everyone. Seeing the mysterious enemy invading, The members of the Don Quixote pirates were about to join forces to capture Dustless, but Doflamingo waved his hand to stop them. "Don't act rashly. This is one of us." Releasing a cold, murderous aura, Doflamingo said tiredly. Dustless frowned slightly, and his eyes quietly spread out, taking in the changes in everyone's expression. Whether it was Hawkeye or Doflamingo, they all showed a deep loss of fatigue. "It's just a kidnapping. Why are you guys like this?" With a little curiosity, Dustless asked whether it was Hawkeye or Doflamingo. As well as the crew, they had obviously experienced a great battle and were extremely tired. "Bastards, those damn bastards are biting the hand that feeds them. How dare they try to snatch the ship after we let them out? Outrageous!" Caesar gnashed his teeth, and the murderous intent in his words could not wait to tear the prisoners of impelled down into pieces. After about 15 minutes, after Hawkeye narrated the original story in detail, Wu Chun understood the cause of the whole thing as if waking up from a dream. Pirates are always greedy and cruel. Doflamingo, who wanted to take advantage of the chaos, released all the prisoners in Impelled Down. It happened that Marine Admiral Sengoku arrived in time and bombarded the entire Impelled Down. The surrounding battleships were smashed, and a group of pirates fled to Doflamingo's pirate ship, and there was inevitable physical contact. Those guys are really unscrupulous. Looking around at the broken pirate ship, Doflamingo said with murderous intent. Dustless glanced at him without a trace. Pirates were indeed cruel and unscrupulous, backstabbing people. As a pirate, Doflamingo was no exception. "Gotcha!" The whole ship burst and became shaky, and it was about to sink to the bottom of the sea. Most of the members of the Don Quixote pirates were ability users, and they looked at them with horror. Devil fruit ability users will die if they fall to the bottom of the sea. Am I, the world's top scientist, going to die in this unknown place? Caesar roared in a low voice, his face full of unwillingness. Just as everyone's heart was filled with despair, a majestic gravitational force suddenly descended. The slowly sinking ship strangely floated up and quickly flew towards the island. The initiator was Dustless, whose right eye turned into Tensigan. The gravity of Tensigan even reached the level of controlling the moon. Now this small ship is naturally not worth mentioning to Dustless. Recalling the conversation between Hawkeye and Doflamingo with Dustless before, everyone realized that the young man in front of them was the big boss behind the scenes. Chapter 478. The broken battleship slowly landed, and everyone's tense heart relaxed. The sea rejected the devil fruit ability and sank to the bottom of the sea. His line of sight spread out, and almost the entire island's appearance was in his eyes. A destroyed mess of a country. The buildings were all destroyed, and there was no one around. It was a bit embarrassing to want to use this as a stronghold. The isolated island was silent, and even a place to sleep and live had to be built. His eyes narrowed slightly, his hands formed a seal, and the ground that was stable before suddenly trembled. As Dustless fell, the surrounding landscape suddenly changed dramatically. Mokutan, Tree World descends. Green trees containing majestic vitality rose from the ground, and in a short time, they densely covered the entire earth, and the twisting green trees were like tens of thousands of pythons. Not only that, the forest also followed Dustless's will to change, and a giant building was built in an instant, majestic and spectacular like a work of God. The time wasted from beginning to end was no more than a few breaths. This is even Doflamingo and Hawkeye, who had witnessed countless stormy waves, were stunned when they saw such a scene, and their pupils were slightly sluggish. Every time he makes a move, it's a shocking ability. Then his body suddenly ignored the existence of gravity and floated in front of Caesar like a cloud. Under the latter's stunned gaze, Dustless handed him the design of Pluto. Caesar was stunned when he saw this. Dustless, who was suspended in the void, looked down at him with extremely uncomfortable eyes, which made Caesar particularly uncomfortable. After immediately remembering the strength of the former, he took the design and looked at it carefully. This is the design of the ancient weapon, Pluto. After a while, Caesar's pupils dilated, and he exclaimed with an inconceivable astonishment, and his tone was unusually trembling. In less than a second, under everyone's speechless gazes, Caesar began to dance with his hands and feet and began to talk crazily. I should be the world's #1 scientist to create an ultimate killing weapon like an ancient weapon, and Vegapunk, that eyesore, will also become a thing of the past. Doflamingo's mouth twitched when he saw this. His heart was in a haze. He suddenly felt that it was an insult to him to spend his painstaking plan on such a weirdo. With all the facilities in place, how long will it take? Dustless nodded and asked straightforwardly. Dustless had never doubted the authenticity of the design. Doflamingo was as cunning as a fox, so he should know the price of deceiving him. This is hard to say. Caesar's expression stiffened when he heard this. After carefully scanning the design drawing again, his brows wrinkled tightly. The size of Pluton's super battleship was almost larger than the island in front of him, and the materials used to build it were also of the highest quality. Even if such a design fell into the hands of pirates, it would be rare for them to build it. Under the condition that all the facilities are in place, it should be able to be completed in 10 to 15 years. Rolling his eyes, Caesar patted his chest and promised solemnly. Dustless heard this, and there was a slight ripple in his eyes. He thought it would take at least 20 years to complete, but he didn't expect the time to be shortened by half. I advise you not to think about it, otherwise this will be your end, Caca. Doflamingo stared at Caesar fiercely. He didn't know when, but a round stone had appeared in his hand. As he suddenly launched his power, it directly turned into powdery dust. 10 to 15 years to build Pluton. He also felt that it was a bit of a fantasy. This is an ultimate weapon that can destroy the world, an ancient weapon, not a cabbage on the roadside. How can I, the world's top brain, talk nonsense? Seeing Doflamingo looking down on him, Caesar suddenly forgot the gap between their strengths and roared at him without showing any weakness. Scientific attainments are what Caesar values the most. However, the premise of all this is that all the facilities are complete and they're all extremely sophisticated machines. Caesar's eyes fell on Dustless, and no matter how distorted his logical thinking ability was, he also knew that the guy in front of him was the boss of Doflamingo and Hawkeye. Hugging the big thigh is also hugging him. As for Doflamingo, he's cool. No problem. You can buy what you need. If you can't, I will send someone to get it from the government. Slowly nodding, Dustless whispered. Opening his mouth, he thought of other problems, and when he was about to tell Caesar other trivial things, the din mushy in his arms suddenly rang. Fleet Admiral Kong, the blue din mushy in his arms. Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise. As the honorary admiral of the Marine headquarters, Dustless also has a din mushy that can independently contact Fleet Admiral Kong. The only thing that puzzles him is that this is the first time Fleet Admiral has taken the initiative to contact him. His eyes narrowed. There must be something wrong. Cough. On the other side of the din mushy, there was a cough, and it sounded tired. Remembering that when Doflamingo and Hawkeye slipped away, they released all the prisoners in Impel Down. Dustless thought that Fleet Admiral Kong would take him as a laborer, but the content of the message made him stiff. Soon, I will retire from the position of Fleet Admiral, and I will be replaced by Sengoku. I hope you can come to Marlindo to participate in the promotion ceremony of Sengoku, and it is best to change from Honorary Admiral to Headquarters Admiral. Sengoku is about to be promoted to Fleet Admiral, which means that there will be a gap in the ranks of Marine Admirals. Z has retired behind the scenes, and Garp has repeatedly refused to be promoted. The situation is worrying. Hearing this, Dustless shook his head decisively. He was not interested in mixing with a group of old men all day long. The leisurely days of Mariehua were more suitable for him. There is no problem in participating in the promotion ceremony of Sengoku. As for the transfer, I have already made an appointment with Gora CI, 5 Elder Stars, so don't mention it again. Chapter 479. Hearing Dustless's rejection of his conditions, Fleet Admiral Kong's face was bitter. Although he had guessed it in advance, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Think about it. If you don't want to be a Tenrya Manji, who would want to be a Marine Admiral, it's a hard job. Don't you think about it? The treatment is good. Even though Dustless refused, Fleet Admiral Kong was still unwilling to accept it. Today's Marine is in a difficult situation. After Sengoku was promoted to Fleet Admiral, it means that Marine Headquarters has no admiral as a deterrent. Pirates all over the world are bound to move, and the Grand Line, which is quiet after Roger's death, is bound to fall into a new round of bloody rain because of the lack of admiral's deterrence. I don't want to say more. Resolutely shaking his head and rejecting Fleet Admiral Kong's proposal, Dustless's face was resolute, and there was no room for retreat. He knows how insidious and cunning Fleet Admiral Kong is. There are actually deeper reasons for being an admiral of Marine Headquarters. Marines are all insidious and cunning. When he just said this proposal, Dustless vaguely guessed Fleet Admiral Kong's purpose. Since that is the case, I will wait for you at the promotion ceremony of the Warring States Kingdom. Marshal Kong raised his head and sighed. He was too lazy to waste his breath and said. When the words fell, he didn't wait for Dustless to respond and turn off the din mushi. As for the impel down incident a few days ago, it must have been suppressed by the Marine. The only thing missing was Caesar, the fish that escaped the net. Naive, 7 warlords of the sea, is not accidental but inevitable. It's useless to stop the government from establishing this pirate organization. What should appear will always appear. Trying to delay the gears of history will only be crushed. With a sneer on his mouth, Dustless thought of Fleet Admiral Kong's previous words. This is the decision of Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. A Marine Fleet Admiral can't refute it. Now the situation of the whole world is obvious. The Marines' combat effectiveness has fallen to an unprecedented weak level. There is a serious lack of high-end combat effectiveness. After Sengoku was promoted to Fleet Admiral, there will be no Admiral in the Marine. At that time, the consequences can be imagined. The silent pirates will riot again, and all kinds of skeleton flags will be planted all over the islands of the Grand Line. Do you want to borrow my power to help you suppress the pirates and prevent the appearance of the 7 warlords of the sea? Boring, even if I really become a real admiral of the Marine, the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, will not stop the policy of barbarian to barbarian. Dustless's strength is beyond doubt, and he is definitely qualified to be an admiral, and he can also use this powerful combat power to suppress the arrogance of pirates all over the world. Fleet Admiral Kong can also use this to prevent the birth of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless's transfer to a genuine Marine Admiral not only fills the lack of high-end combat power, but also suppresses pirates all over the world. In addition to the Shichibukai plan, it is killing 3 birds with 1 stone. On the contrary, if Dustless does not become a genuine admiral and still lives behind the scenes, the 7 warlords of the sea is bound to come out. Only by using this abnormal force to fill the shortage of admiral and to deter the pirates of the Grand Line, and even the world full of pirates will continue to be balanced. Dustless, who eats both black and white, can't wait for the Shichibukai to appear quickly. He is destined not to agree with Fleet Admiral Kong's idea. All in all, the 7 warlords of the sea, an evil force dressed in the cloak of justice, is an inevitable product of the chaotic times, and it can't be stopped, and under the power of the Marine, can't change the reality at all. The will of the Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars, is greater than everything. Although I sympathize with you, but, after all, our positions are different. Looking at the blue void in the distance, Dustless was filled with emotion. He understood the difficulties of the Marine, and if he was in their shoes, he couldn't agree with the Shichibukai plan. Former comrades have fallen under the swords and sticks of pirates, and now they have to abandon their old grievances and join forces with each other. The entire Marine can't accept such a ridiculous proposal. Can't accept it, but it doesn't mean that they can refuse. The Marine can't violate the meaning of the Gorosei, 5 elder stars, from beginning to end, because they are only the surface face of the world government. Shaking his head, Dustless was just about to leave when he seemed to have thought of something. Waves of ripples suddenly swept out from the void behind him, and countless divine weapons flashed out from within. The azure-blue void was instantly dyed golden. So many weapons, so many berries. Pirates are greedy, and the Don Quixote pirates were stunned. Their eyes were fixed on the various weapons floating in the sky, and they unconsciously swallowed their saliva. Even the top pirates like Doflamingo can't let go of the treasures in the sky. Strength is very important, and so is the glittering berries. If you want to develop, you can't leave this kind of thing stained with money. With a wave of his hand, the weapons floating in the sky fell to the ground and piled up into a mountain. If you don't have enough, you can buy it. You don't have to rob. Staring at Doflamingo, Dustless said faintly, "Ever since he had the Gate of Babylon, this heaven-defying ability, money had changed from the original material to a concept. It takes an astronomical amount of money to buy all kinds of machinery and materials to build Pluton. According to Caesar's preliminary estimate, it will cost at least 10 billion berries, and this is only the initial investment. The Don Quixote pirates certainly can't afford it. It's a pity to exchange this kind of weapon for scrap metal." Hawkeye's calm pupils loosened. He thought his black knife was a peerless divine weapon. Among the divine weapons that Wu Chun casually took out, many of them were at the same level as the Black Knife Knight. And the most speechless thing is that these weapons comparable to the Black Blade Knight will soon be exchanged for money. If you like it, you can help yourself. Looking at the restrained members of the Don Quixote pirates, Dustless lazily said, and then his body disappeared into the clouds. Chapter 480. The Marine headquarters was no different from the past, but it was more solemn. The promotion of the fleet admiral during the Sengoku period was not as prosperous as imagined. The outside world didn't even know the most basic news. It was extremely low-key, and only the soldiers of the Marine headquarters knew the inside story. The soldiers on guard stared with their eyes wide open. Today was the day when the fleet admiral was replaced. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sharp sound of breaking the air suddenly resounded through the sky. The harsh, sharp sound made the soldiers' ears stuffy. They subconsciously looked up and saw a straight beam of light coming from the distant sky. A strong wind blew head-on, and in just a short time, a young man in a white coat appeared out of thin air. Taking a closer look, it was Wu Chun, who rushed over in a hurry. "Who is it?" A group of Marines glared and pointed their guns at the mysterious intruder. They stared at Dustless fiercely. On such an important day, someone dared to invade the Marine headquarters. They were about to pull the trigger in their hands when a tall figure stopped their actions. "Vice Admiral Sakazuki, this guy is an intruder." A group of Marines looked at the sudden appearance of Vice Admiral Sakazuki, and the battle instantly value report. The news that the future Sakazuki, a kainu, will be promoted to an admiral of the Marine headquarters has spread. There are even rumors that Sakazuki, a kainu, already has the strength to be on par with an admiral, but his age and qualifications have not reached the level of an admiral. "Put down the gun, or you will die." Looking at Dustless, Sakazuki said indifferently. The rolling hoarse voice did not have human emotions. It was no different from steel. The Marines who raised their guns looked at each other and put down their guns. "Please." Turning sideways, Sakazuki made an inviting gesture to Dustless. Hearing this, Dustless nodded silently and walked away under the stunned gaze of the Marines. The dark-skinned Akainu with a hat followed closely behind. Only a group of petrified Marines were left, staring at each other. In the heavily guarded corridor, Marines could be seen standing guard only a few meters apart. They looked meticulous, and at first glance, they were the elites of the elites. Sakazuki, a kainu, raised its eyes and looked at Dustless, who was alone in front of it. The surprise and confusion in its eyes were clearly visible. The highest level meeting of the Navy, even if he is a celestial dragon, it has nothing to do with him. After thinking about it, Sakazuki didn't guess the purpose of dustless. Usually, when the Tenryubito is beaten, the Marine Admiral will come out. Dustless was not beaten, but he came to the Marine headquarters without being beaten. He was really puzzled. In particular, the current meeting was extraordinary. Even the Vice Admirals of the Marine may not be eligible to participate. If it wasn't for Fleet Admiral Sengoku to make an exception and allow him, Kazan, and Borsellino to participate, I'm afraid they would be rejected. Dustless was an outsider, but he was an honored guest. No one could feel at ease. "What's so strange about you, Sakazuki?" Suddenly pausing, Dustless turned to look at Sakasuji, who was completely wrapped up, and asked with a smile, "To be honest, I'm not interested in such a small meeting either. But since your marshal is begging me so humbly, I have no choice but to give him face. He's the general of the army after all. He may be a little cunning and shameless, but I still have to give him face." After that, Dustless pretended to shrug helplessly, as if he was very reluctant and forced. Sakazuki, the corner of his mouth twitched. Even if Sakazuki had a stone-like mentality, he was still annoyed by Dustless's words, but in the end his burning red iron fist relaxed. The identity of the two, whether its strength, is the difference between heaven and earth. There is a dimensional gap. Inside the Marine Headquarters Fleet Admiral office, Fleet Admiral Kong was leisurely sitting on the sofa, leisurely smoking, and even humming a rare song in his mouth. This comfortable appearance was like walking in the clouds. His whole body was light and very comfortable. On the other hand, Sengoku's face was gloomy. He was wearing the original Fleet Admiral Kong's uniform. Obviously, Sengoku has been promoted to Fleet Admiral, and the original Fleet Admiral Kong also went one step further and became the world government's Fleet Admiral. His status was second only to Gorosei, 5 Elder Stars. You don't have to be angry, Sengoku. The Marine is actually in such a situation. In the name of absolute justice to maintain the peace of the world seas, they are essentially the world government's dogs. Their orders can only be obeyed. Seeing Fleet Admiral Sengoku's pale face, the Chief Staff Officer Tsuru smiled bitterly and comforted him. Although it's unpleasant to hear, it's true. The Marine is just the government's surface face. As long as they can maintain the stability of the world, it doesn't matter if they lose this surface face. Creak. At this moment, the door of the conference room was gently pushed open, and Dustless and Sakazuki were exposed to everyone's sight. Staring at Sengoku, who was already wearing the Fleet Admiral uniform, Dustless's face showed an apologetic smile and whispered, "I'm sorry, there were some unexpected accidents on the road, delayed the journey, and I'm late." After that, Dustless put on an "I've tried my best" expression, causing everyone to roll their eyes. Even an idiot could see that he was deliberately stalling for time, waiting for Sengoku to become the Fleet Admiral before he arrived. Sengoku was too lazy to talk nonsense. To be honest, he felt strange that Dustless could arrive in person. Then he nodded towards Dustless and pointed to the remaining position on the sofa, motioning Dustless to sit there. Seeing everyone seated, Sengoku ordered his assistant to hand each of the documents on the table, and then drank the boiling tea in the cup, as if this was the only way to suppress the anger in his heart. No wonder Sengoku is so secretive. After carefully browsing the contents of the document, Dustless knew why Sengoku's face was so ugly. These people's courage is really extraordinary, and their practice is really provocative, which is tantamount to slapping the face of the new Fleet Admiral. Chapter 481. And they racked their brains to think of the most insulting way to Marine and replied to a letter to Fleet Admiral Sengoku. How can he not be angry? In this era, the Marine is synonymous with the cunning of a mouse. They were willing to wash their hands of the gold basin, but in the end, they were wiped out by the Marine's rogue. The number of pirates is uncountable. It's no wonder that Sengoku chose to make a big move, and he was beaten in the face. Even if he has been practicing for many years in the sea, there is still a burning pain. Spinning a cocoon, Dustless sat silently on the sofa, silent and speechless, putting on a look of indifference. He is just a so-called honorary admiral. He has no right to interfere. Of course, he is too lazy to ask more. The reason why he came to brush his sense of existence is to sell Sengoku in Fleet Admiral Sky's face. A group of villains who commit all kinds of crimes are so arrogant, hateful. Sengoku was so angry that he felt an unprecedented sense of grievance. He had already lowered his posture and hoped that some influential pirates would join the 7 warlords of the sea, but he didn't expect that the invited pirates would still be so arrogant. Not only did they kill the messenger he sent, but they also wrote a bunch of messy things that belittled and disgusted him as a Marine Fleet Admiral. Since that group of villains don't know what's good for them, there is no need to establish the so-called Shichibukai, this ridiculous force. It is better to send troops directly to annihilate them. Fleet Admiral Sengoku sneered again and again. Marine has lowered their body and face. Since they are not willing to join, Sengoku can only follow the general trend and send troops to crusade against those arrogant pirates. That's impossible, Sengoku. The 5 won't allow you to act recklessly according to your own will. The Shichibukai's matter is their acquiescence. General Kong's tone was sad, and he felt the same way. It's good to have a meteoric rise, but he is not a person who forgets his roots. The Marine created him, and Sky also created the Marine. He has a kind of love for the Marine from his soul. His most beloved soul was about to be stained, and his heart ached. A superior official can crush someone to death. Hearing Commander Kong's words, Sengoku raised his head and sighed. The loneliness in his tone made all the generals present silent. The only one who could remain indifferent was Dustless. He is not a real Marine, and he is not destined to integrate into this circle. The relationship between the world government and the Marine is not as harmonious and close as the world thinks. In fact, they're not as close as they seem to be, and they're always scheming against each other. Thinking about it, Dustless can't help but smile. I'm afraid that Sengoku and the entire Marine didn't expect that in the face of the temptation of the 7 warlords of the sea, the pirates still firmly refused, which was completely unexpected. To be qualified to plunder and avoid the pursuit of the Marine, such generous conditions are hard to come by. Sengoku and the Marine headquarters senior officials don't understand, but Dustless, as a bystander, knows the reason. In fact, it's very simple. The biggest problem is that the Marine can't be trusted at all. There are countless backstabbing incidents. Not to mention, pirates and the Marine are 2 opposite enemies after all. Only ghosts believe in the grand undertaking of abandoning the past. Idiots will also think of this as a trap for the Marine. The end of the road is not terrible, but if they are stabbed to death by their teammates, I'm afraid no one can get over it. And the Marine is the one who often does this kind of thing. There are countless pirates who believe that the Marine will eventually end up dead. There are many famous sayings in the Marine. Even if a pirate intends to repent, his sins can't be washed away by a moment of awakening. Therefore, when a pirate bows to the Marine, there are only 2 ways to go. The first is definitely to go to heaven and forever fall into the arms of God. The second is to be imprisoned in the deep sea prison, impelled down, that kind of dark hell on earth where you will never bathe in the sun and absorb the fresh air. In fact, as long as someone is willing to help, the establishment of the Shichibukai is just a small matter. Just when everyone had a headache and was thinking hard, Admiral Kong suddenly smiled mysteriously. Hearing this, all the Marines were stunned and looked at him with slight expectation. So was Dustless. Admiral Kong came into view with his hands in front of him, and the corners of his mouth were raised high. His slightly proud, rough face, combined with his old eyes, looked very cunning. In the face of everyone's gaze, Admiral Kong was calm, but his eyes were faintly looking at Dustless. Why doesn't this old guy's temper change? This is not the way to pit people. Seeing this, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He knew that this strong little old man asked him to come to the ceremony of Sengoku. It was not a good thing, so he deliberately delayed the time, but he didn't expect to be caught by this very deep old man. Dustless didn't have any other complicated purpose. He just wanted to watch the meeting silently as an observer. Who knows that in the end, he was pulled into the water by this old man. Looking at Admiral Kong, who pretended to be stupid, Dustless faintly guessed his purpose. If it was him, he could indeed promote the Shichibukai plan to be temporarily established. The Marines present were the elites of the elites. They were both intelligent and brave. Even Garp, who had the most nerves, was actually a meticulous man. In an instant, he understood what Admiral Kong meant. What you said is true. Admiral Kong's words made Sengoku suddenly enlightened, and he secretly scolded him for his ignorance. Before he fell into a blind spot of thought, in fact, he could find another shortcut. Pirates can choose not to join the 7 warlords of the sea, but their own people can temporarily fill in. Juro Killmyhawk, the man with the nickname Hawkeye, can be temporarily stuffed into this organization. Anyway, he is also a pirate, and he can make an example to the pirates of the world. Chapter 482. Dustless already knew that he couldn't stay out of it, and he could no longer keep a low profile. Moreover, he is a Tenryuzu, and several people present know that. The 3 future generals have seen Dustless, and they must know his identity as a Tenryuzu. Marine hero Garp, Sengoku, and Air Commander, including Vice Admiral Tsuru, all know Dustless. Deliberate disguise will only increase the ridicule. Although Hawkeye will not question my orders, this involves his personal affairs. I can only say that I will try my best. His own choice has nothing to do with me. The void splashed with ripples, and Dustless's voice came out, giving an ambiguous answer. Hawkeye doesn't join the 7 warlords of the sea. It doesn't matter to Wu Chun. It's just up to him. Hearing this, Sengoku's lonely heart was barely at ease. As long as Wu Chun opened his mouth to help, it would be fine. He had just been appointed as the marshal, and there were twists and turns. Even if his nerves were made of iron, he could not bear it. The big pirates who received the invitation to become Shichibukai before, including Chinjo and other influential figures, adopted the same means. After slaughtering the Marines sent in the past, they racked their brains to ridicule him as the new fleet admiral. That Chinjo is really vengeful. I just dented his head, and he still hates me. Garp's nerve was quite big, full of innocence. He just performed his duty as a righteous soldier, but he didn't expect to be hated by Chinjo. However, this innocent remark was met with a roar of anger from Sengoku. Garp, you bastard. If you were willing to be an admiral, none of this would have happened. Staring at the legendary hero, Sengoku's last roar turned into a long sigh and a wry smile. From the moment he joined the Marine, he and Garp were close teammates. While appreciating each other, they were also competitors. It wasn't until Garp refused to be promoted to admiral that all this stopped. Otherwise, it might not be him who became the fleet admiral. From the looks of it, Garp was the final victor. He was living his life happily. With the end of Garp's speech, the serious atmosphere in the office also relaxed. This was also what Sengoku was happy to see. Garp could play such a mysterious role every time, which could relieve the depression during the meeting. As for Dustless, everyone ignored him for a while. Green Pepper. I didn't expect him to be one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Dustless thought to himself with some surprise in his dark pupils. Cone Green Pepper was also one of the legendary great pirates. His strength was unfathomable, and his reputation was well known. His iron head technique had reached the acme of perfection. As the saying goes, people are afraid of fame, and pigs are afraid of being fat. In the end, because of his fame, he finally met his strongest enemy, the hero of the Navy, Vice Admiral Garp. After a fierce battle between the two, his sharp head was caved in by Garp's iron fist. After that, Cone Green Pepper, who was lucky enough to escape, gradually went into seclusion and faded out of sight. Even so, his hatred for Garp was increasing day by day. He hated Garp day and night. How could Cone Green Pepper join the Marine, let alone become the so-called 7 warlords of the sea? Naturally, he refused the invitation of the Marine. There's this old guy. A huge monster came into Dustless's sight. He had a fiery hairstyle and looked like a devil. There were 2 horns on the forehead, sharp ears and teeth, and there were crisscross stitches from head to neck. His whole body was dressed in a bat suit, which looked nondescript. It was Gecko Moria. However, this old guy also refused the conditions of Sengoku. He was not interested in joining the so-called 7 warlords of the sea. He even cut off the shadow of the marine personnel sent by Sengoku. Thinking about it, Moria's new world was doing well. He had not yet fought with 100 Beast Kaido, and his strength was at its peak. There were countless members under the ship, and there was no need to get involved in the Shichibukai. What's more, pirates don't have a good impression of the Marine. It's the same reason that the Marine hates pirates. After careful confirmation, Dustless never found the name of Doflamingo. With his strength, it's not difficult for him to be qualified for the 7 warlords of the sea. Obviously, it's someone with a higher status than Sengoku. Naturally, it's the 5 people of the world government who can have such a method. As for Boa Hancock, who was originally invited, her name did not appear on the list. First, her current identity is Dustless's slave. Second, she did not do anything bad and is not a wanted criminal. However, the pirates who were invited this time refused the conditions of Sengoku. It seems that the corner of his mouth squirmed slightly. When Dustless was about to help Sengoku, a strange energy fluctuation suddenly came from his body, and the words on his mouth suddenly stopped. Through the special charm left on Princess Odoheim, he learned that one of the 3 ancient weapons in the future, Poseidon, has been born from Princess Odoheim's belly, and it's named Shirahoshi. With the birth of Shirahoshi, Dustless was barely relieved, and the corner of his mouth outlined a smile. He did not intend to stop the mother and son from living a quiet life. No one knows the conditions of Poseidon's awakening. That is after a few years, waiting for Monchi D. Luffy to help Shirahoshi awaken Poseidon. Dustless will take one of the most powerful weapons in the world. The plan to build the super battleship Pluto is also being urgently started. At that time, Dustless will have 2 peerless weapons in his hands. As for where the legendary Heavenly King is hiding, there is no way to know, but according to Dustless's guess, Heavenly King should belong to a behemoth of an aircraft. Its own area is even more exaggerated than Pluto. Chapter 483. Dustless's thoughts turned back, and he suddenly thought of the extraordinarily beautiful and graceful woman. Princess Odoheim always had a sad look, which was reflected in the dark pupils of Dustless's pupils. If he remembered correctly, not long after, this kind, beautiful, and sentimental princess consort would pass away. Even if she dies, I will squeeze out her last value. With a cold smile on his face, Dustless secretly decided. He made up his mind that on the day of Princess Odoheim's death, he will rescue her from the cage without leaving a trace, so that Shirahoshi can be used again at a certain time when she awakens Sea King's ability in the future. Shirahoshi's birth has nothing to do with Dustless. Only through the card of Princess Odoheim, she will be dependent on him, so that he can better control this destructive Sea King in the future. Sea King's ability is very exaggerated. He can summon Sea Kings with a volume of more than 5,000 meters. In this world where the Sea Kings are rampant, there is no doubt that they're the absolute overlord. Even if it's a 5,000-meter insect, it will cause a landslide, not to mention the powerful Sea King. While Dustless was daydreaming, this boring meeting also came to an end. The content was quite simple. Since some big pirates are afraid of the government, they can only hire someone else. This is also the result of a helpless situation. The admirals of the Marine headquarters are already extinct. Sakazuki, Akinu, Kozo Akiji, and Borsellino Kazuru will soon become the new 3 admirals. The only flaw is that the current 3 admirals are not qualified enough. It will be difficult for them to be promoted to admiral. Some people with ulterior motives will inevitably fan the flames. The crowd left the conference room one after another, and in the blink of an eye, there were only a few people left. Dustless was about to leave quietly, but an unexpected figure suddenly pulled his thin arm. Looking back, it was Fleet Admiral Sengoku. "There's something I have to tell you clearly," Sengoku said with a serious look. Hearing this, Dustless nodded slightly. Just listening to Sengoku's heavy voice, he knew that it was not a trivial matter. Since Kaido escaped from the hands of the Marine again, he began to rapidly expand his base in the New World and attack the Marine base unscrupulously, deliberately retaliating against the Marine. Sengoku said with a little tiredness. Now it's an eventful time. Bad news comes to his ears every day. General Kong also nodded cautiously. The reason why the warring states were reluctant to establish the 7 warlords of the sea and now hope to establish it as soon as possible was the biggest factor. Kaido, that tough guy, is now listed as the most powerful big pirates by the world, together with Whitebeard AI from the New World, Big Mom, and Red Hair, that kid who came later. They're all given a collective title. Commander Kong's murderous intent was awe-inspiring as he became a great pirate. This was an indirect slap to the Marine's old face. However, the most intolerable thing was that arrogant title. "Is it the Yonko for emperors?" Dustless asked tentatively, thinking of the famous emperor in the future. The Yonko for emperors are the super overlords of the second half of the Grand Line. The strength of each emperor is at the peak of perfection, and there are almost no pirates who can compete with them. Yes, a group of short-sighted pirates dare to crown themselves with such an arrogant title. Do they even put the Marine in their eyes? Commander Kong's eyes widened, and he slammed the table. The meaning of a Yonko for emperors is self-evident. It is like an emperor overlooking the vast and endless sea. Where will the Marine's face go? Sengoku's old face is like a black pot, which is the fundamental reason why he changed his mind and hoped to establish the Shichibukai as soon as possible. Although he is very dissatisfied with these big pirates and even disgusted with them, it's still good to be able to use the barbarian strategy to suppress the so-called Yonko for emperors. Otherwise, the advantage that the Marine has gained since the execution of Roger will be dissipated by the 4 local emperors who have just ascended the throne, and they will fall into a disadvantage again. Dustless couldn't help but smile and despise Fleet Admiral Kong's words. If pirates really want to put the Marine in their eyes, there will be no pirates in the world. Good Yonko for emperors. I'm afraid that the higher you stand, the worse you fall. Sengoku sneered. The corner of his eyes glanced at Sengoku without a trace. Dustless keenly smelled a touch of hostility from Sengoku's tone, and his heart sank. There's a saying that after the establishment of the Shichibukai, Sengoku will choose to kill one of the Yonko for emperors, and even if it's not good, he will mix up the other party's teeth. So what do you want me to do? It shouldn't be as simple as persuading Hawkeye to join the Shichibukai. Stretching his waist, Dustless asked with a yawn, deliberately making an impatient look, indicating that if the two have any questions, it's okay. Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Kong looked at each other. Both had a difficult look, and then nodded silently. With a look, Sengoku walked to Dustless's ear, and immediately lowered his head and gossiped in Dustless's ear. His voice was as thin as a mosquito. Sengoku didn't say anything, but halfway through, Dustless's mouth twitched uncontrollably, and his face turned green. Are you kidding me? You want me to be a lab rat for the crazy scientist Vegapunk? You should go to Sabo Salino Kizuru for this kind of thing. I think he will be willing to sacrifice himself for the Marine. His spittle flew all over the sky and sprayed all over Sengoku's face. After Dustless kicked the door of the conference room into pieces, he rushed out of the door with a black line hanging on his head. Only Sengoku and Fleet Admiral Kong were left with a bitter smile on their faces. It is indeed impossible for Dustless, a dignified Tenryubito, to be a lab rat for Vegapunk. However, as Dustless said before he left, he can only take a step back. There is always Borsalino. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference. as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.